think he should go.
I don't agree with that, but I do believe we need big change. I mean, the voters have spoken loud and clear today that they don't think that we are good enough, and business as usual isn't going to cut the mustard. And I think it's been absolutely heart-wrenching. And there's no beating around the bush. These are terrible results.
Labour has hemorrhaged council seats in England and lost control to Reform in Sunderland and Barnsley. LBC's Phoebe Abruzese is in Sunderland.
It's been an utter humiliation for Labour across the North East. Here in Sunderland, Reform have 10 times more councillors than them, even though they've held the authority for 52 years, since the council was created, actually. They've been reduced to a mere handful. Everybody from Labour refused to talk to reporters here today. Obviously, the result is still stinging.
In Wales, the now former First Minister, Eluned Morgan, has lost her seat in the Senedd. But Reform UK is celebrating huge successes. They're up 1,100 seats and have taken 8 councils. Deputy Leader Richard Tice was asked by Andrew Marr if the party would look at working with the Conservatives come the next general election. He says he's only interested in winning a Reform majority.
Based on today's results, I understand that Kemi Badenoch would lose her seat and James Cleverly may well be headed down the same road. And anybody who's worried about a dreadful coalition of chaotic socialist hard left politics needs to vote Reform. It is as simple as that.
Kemi Badenoch insists she's very proud of the Tories' results, despite also shedding votes. But former Conservative minister and editor of The Spectator, Lord Gove, has told LBC they are trailing behind Reform.
I'm afraid that Nigel Farage's success in almost, not quite every, but almost every part of the United Kingdom does mean that at the moment he has to be the favourite to be in number 10. Whether or not as leader of a majority or not, we'd see. But certainly you would have to bet on him being the leader of the largest party.
The Greens have taken control of 3 new councils, while the Liberal Democrats are up 1. Leader of the Green Party, Zach Balansky, is also pleased they have a new mayor in East London.
What Zoe has done in Hackney, and we're seeing right across the country, is the Green Party are offering a tangible plan for change, alongside hope. That's such a powerful combination. And what I see all across the country are people saying they're feeling hopeful for politics for the first time. Some people, yes, were disillusioned with Labour and are now voting for the Green Party, but lots of people are voting for the Green Party for the very first time who didn't vote before, and that's really exciting.
In Scotland, the SNP is claiming victory but may not get a majority. Plaid Cymru have won the most seats in the Welsh Parliament. Also, this afternoon, a 9th person has been arrested following an arson attack on 4 volunteer ambulances in North London. The 48-year-old man is being questioned after the vehicles were targeted in Golders Green in March. And a man has denied threatening Andrew Mountbatten Windsor, close to his home on the Sandringham estate. 39-year-old Alex Jenkinson from Suffolk will stand trial in July. In the city, the FTSE 100 has closed down 43 points at 10,233. The pound buys $1.36 and €1.15. LBC weather: showers easing for most overnight, with clear spells developing. Rain lingering in northern England and southeast Scotland, lows of 2. A sunny start for some, then cloud and showers developing widely tomorrow, staying brighter in the northwest and far southeast, a high of 21 degrees. From Global's newsroom for LBC, I'm Amelia Cox.
This is LBC from Global, leading Britain's conversation with Iain Dale.
Hello, a very good evening. It's 4 minutes past 7 on LBC. Welcome to my first Friday night programme for a long time. I wonder why I'm on a Friday night. I mean, today of all days. I don't... You know why I'm on. It is Christmas Day for political geeks. And I think it is true to say that this is the most momentous set of election results, local election results, in England that I've witnessed for a very, very long time. And when you put together what's happened in Wales and Scotland, there is so much to discuss. There are quite a few results still to come. But we have just got the final result from Wales. So let me give you that. Well, Plaid Cymru are the biggest party on 43. They needed to get, I think it's 47 or 48 to get a majority. So they will either have to govern as a minority or in coalition with another party. Well, it won't be Reform. They got 34 seats, so they will be the official opposition in the Senedd. Labour, bear in mind that Labour have effectively won every election in Wales since 1922. they were down to 9 seats. They lost 35 seats, including that of the First Minister, Eleanor Morgan. The Conservatives are down 22 seats to 7. The Greens enter the Senedd for the first time with 2, and the Liberal Democrats have got 1, which is what they had before. So a really momentous result in Wales, which we'll spend quite a lot of time discussing. I'd like to get your reaction as well throughout the programme, basically to any of the results that you've heard. If you've got some experience, maybe you've been involved in a campaign in a local area, you want to give a short interpretation, because you would have been hearing throughout the day on LBC Natasha Clark, Aggie Chambray et al. Giving their interpretations of the results. But you may know something locally that we here collectively don't. So we'd love to hear from you during the course of the programme. We'll be hearing from representatives from all of the political parties and a few other commentators too. Well, joining me in the studio for the whole programme is Gareth Knight, LBC's elections commentator. Gareth, welcome. Aggie Chambray is here for the next hour and a bit. Thank you very much for joining us, Aggie. Now let's start with you. What do you want to pick out of the events of the day to highlight first?
Well, I think the best place to start is the fact that it has been catastrophic for Labour. As much as anyone tried to spin this as this is just another set of midterm elections, and incumbent governments always do badly in midterm elections, I think we now can say that is not the case. Something has gone seriously wrong for the Labour Party and indeed the Labour government. There was extraordinary expectation management. And as you said, we are still waiting for some results, but it doesn't look like Labour will have done as badly as some pollsters suggesting, talking about, 1,800 seat losses in the local elections. It looks like it will be closer to maybe 1,200, 1,300, but still extraordinary. And of course, those results in Wales and in Scotland too, an absolute bloodbath for the Labour Party. And people I've spoken to today do say that those are worse than expected. Bright spots they expected to see just have not materialised. And the question was always going to be, if the results looked like they do, what is going to happen to Sir Keir Starmer's leadership? That was something he addressed before a lot of the results had actually come in this morning. This is what he said.
These are really tough results. I'm not going to sugarcoat it. And we have lost brilliant Labour representatives, people who put so much into their communities, so much into our party and our movement. And the voters have sent a message about the pace of change, how they want their lives improved. May was elected to meet those challenges, and I'm not going to walk away from those challenges and plunge the country into chaos. They've sent a message that the change that we promised isn't being delivered in a way they can feel, and also, frankly, they're fed up with years of the status quo. But we were elected to deal with those challenges, and I'm not going to walk away from that.
You may have noticed, Iain, that he said 2 times in that short clip, I'm not going to walk away. He actually said it, I think, 4 or 5 times within the space of a 4-minute interview. So that was clearly the line he wanted to get across. Whether or not he is able to remain in post, I think, is altogether a different question.
But the key thing here is that if we went back a year and played the interview that he did after the local elections last year, he said exactly the same thing. He said, well, we know the electorate want change. They want us to go further, faster. And that is the line that minister after minister, and I'm sure we're going to hear it from Diana Johnston in about 10 minutes, that's the line that they've all been told to take. But it doesn't wash, because they said it last year, and nothing, in the immortal words of Theresa May, nothing has changed.
Well, I think that is the accusation, Iain, and that is what is really damaging. And there are MPs tonight calling for him to go. Conor Naismith, just to pick a name at random, a Labour MP, saying it is clear to me we need new leadership. But I wonder whether more damaging is the senior Labour MPs, like ones I've spoken to, like Louise Haigh, who's head of what's called the Tribune Group, former Transport Secretary, of course, calling for him to basically be gone by the next set of elections, which are, of course, next year, unless things have significantly changed.
But that's what people were saying this time last year. I mean, I think that is a wimpy position from Louise Haigh to say, oh, well, he'll have to go next year if things aren't improving. Again, that's what they were saying this time last year. In fact, Louise Haigh, I think herself, if I remember rightly, I think she has said in the past, well, if the local elections are bad, he'll have to go. And now she's watering it down.
Well, we can hear now what she said to LBC earlier today.
We have to be honest that the Prime Minister and national issues came up on almost every single door. The Prime Minister is doing an exceptional job on the international stage, managing a global crisis, which he has to be successful in because our constituents' livelihoods depend on it. So we cannot descend into a messy, internal and irresponsible leadership contest. But the results today are crystal clear. If the government do not deliver significant and urgent change, then it's absolutely clear the Prime Minister cannot take us into another election.
But Iain, you are not the only person who thinks that this is all a bit wimpy. And I think we need to be crystal clear about why people are calling for conditional timelines. And let's be clear, it's not just Louise Haigh, it is lots of other Labour MPs on and off the record too. But the reason those timelines are being talked about is effectively because no one's really ready to challenge the Prime Minister. That is where we are tonight. And that is why people are talking about, well, next year if things haven't improved.
And you see, that's his problem, in that he will not be able to point at anything that he can change in the short term. I mean, if he is given a year, then you would hope that he could turn things around by the time of the next local elections. But I can't think of any single measure that he could now announce next week in the King's speech to say, right, well, this is a very different approach that we're going to take. But maybe our listeners might be able to suggest. It's interesting. We've got a lot of calls coming in, and often on election programmes, you don't get a lot of calls. So I promise you, I'm going to come to as many of them as I can during the course of the programme, probably more in the second and third hours than the first. I'll warn you now. But Gareth Knight, let's talk to you. Let's start with you with going through all the parties, and I want you to tell me where they've done maybe better than expected or where they've done worse than expected. If we start off in England, Reform UK at the moment, they've gained about 1,200 councillors, so that's obviously going to ramp up a bit. Labour have lost just over 1,000. Lib Dems, they've gained 88. The Conservatives have lost 466. The Greens have gained 269, and Independents down 26. Well, let's start with Reform UK, because they had huge expectations. Have they surpassed them? And if they haven't, where have they failed?
I think that it would be unfair to say that they haven't surpassed realistic expectations. Of course, on any election night, you end up with spin. Politicians spin like crazy, including Reform and the Greens, who always claim they're unlike other politicians, but fundamentally they spin. There's no denying that Reform have done extremely well. You look down the list of gains they have made from Labour, and it's a textbook of Labour heartlands: Gateshead, Sunderland, Thurrock, South Tyneside, and St Helens. And if there was one council in the whole country you would say that will be Labour forever, I would say it would be Barnsley, and Reform have gained that. And they've not just gained it, they've gained it with an enormous majority.
And Sunderland.
Yeah, I mean, these are councils that are solidly Labour, and Reform have swept the board. They will have stonking majorities for the foreseeable future in these areas. Labour losses over 1,000 and climbing, and the vast majority of them to Reform. So quite a significant number to the Greens as well. One thing we have to bear in mind, this is year 2 of five-party politics. 2 years ago, Reform were not a thing. 1 year ago, the Greens weren't really a thing. You and I on election nights have often talked up the Greens, and they've frequently failed to deliver big numbers. Now they are delivering big numbers. And the Greens have taken Waltham Forest and Norwich, again, straight from Labour.
The Greens have taken Waltham Forest.
The Greens
I used to live there.
Forest.
I mean, that is incredible.
Well, the Conservatives have taken Enfield, which is even more incredible, because the Conservatives a few years ago wrote off Enfield as an area. Demographic shifts, they thought that was written off. And this is the problem that Labour have got. They're being attacked from all angles. The Lib Dems are focusing an awful lot of their targeting at the Conservatives in what people call the Blue Wall area, those affluent commuter belt areas around London. But the reality is that the Lib Dems would probably quite fancy a pop at Labour as well. The Lib Dems will probably come back up. I've never really seen a set of local elections where a governing party that isn't really in a tangible, specific crisis, in like Partygate. There isn't something like that going on, and the governing party is losing councils that it would never in a million years have expected to lose. And I think losing Barnsley is as big a news story as you're going to get. It's the equivalent of when the Conservatives famously lost Tunbridge Wells in the 90s. It was one of those moments where you just thought that could surely never happen. So extremely bad for Labour. Drill down into some of those results, by the way, and they're even worse. You look at the results in Wigan, again, a very safe Labour area, and Reform have just swept the board. So even if you get beyond the headlines, it just gets worse for Keir Starmer, not better.
Well, here's another one. Labour lost the, I don't know whether they ever had it. I think it's the new mayoralty in Hackney. The Greens won that. We'll be talking to Zoe Garbett, who won it for the Greens after 7:30. But they're also being tipped to take Hackney Council with a majority, with 30 seats having been declared so far. They have 22 seats. And Labour have 3. Now, that could be replicated in other London councils. And I think that in our time slot, up till 10 o'clock, that may be one of the big stories of the day. But the Conservatives have nothing to crow about at all in these elections. Well, actually, they've got a couple of councils. You just mentioned one there. And they retained control of Bexley, which Reform were expecting to win. And Nigel Farage said he was certain they were going to win that. Well, they haven't. But overall, they are down close on 500 seats. And you look at their strongholds in East Anglia, and it's a car crash, isn't it? I was looking at the Norfolk results, which obviously an area I know well. They're down to 6 seats on Norfolk County Council, with Reform taking control. And even the so-called Great Yarmouth, I think, was it called Great Yarmouth Independence Party or something like that? They've got 12 seats, and the Conservatives in the rest of Norfolk have got 6. Suffolk is a similar story, Essex even worse. And you think, well, is that recoverable?
So a lot of these councils that originally had their elections cancelled or postponed and then had them reinstated about 10 weeks ago, a lot of those areas are the areas that Reform have really done well against the Conservatives. I suspect there's quite a lot of local issues going on there. My understanding from Norfolk is there are quite a few local issues to the council.
There always are, believe me.
That county council was, I think, one of the main leaders of the campaign to stop these elections going ahead. So there are always local issues at stake. But yeah, the Conservatives, on the face of it, overnight, I actually thought the Conservatives could turn around and pat themselves on the back a little bit. They'd, certainly in London. And I think the key thing for Kemi Badenoch is that she needs to identify what a Conservative in 2026 actually looks like. And the difficulty she's got is she inherited a party that had won a big majority under Boris Johnson with a coalition that was always going to be a one-off for that election. And what does she now make the Conservatives look like? Does she make them look like a party of mortgage holders, young families, aspiring people? That's what Margaret Thatcher wanted to do. Or does she have to end up going back to your old age pensioners and the people that now Reform are trying to get from her?
Well, more good news for the Greens. They've taken Norwich City Council, which again has been a Labour stronghold for decades. The ward that I stood in 1985, safe Labour ward, I saw earlier, has gone green by a majority of about 800, which, I mean, absolutely incredible. Right, we'll talk more about this in just a moment. We'll take some calls, and we'll also be talking to Diana Johnson, the Labour Minister. It's 7:18.
Hear every side of the story. This is LBC.
You've probably been with the same energy supplier for decades. And why wouldn't you be? Loyalty matters. But lately, bigger hasn't always felt better. You've probably dealt with long waits and endless automated menus in search of someone who can actually help. Octopus Energy is now Britain's biggest energy supplier, trusted by over 8 million customers, because we do things differently. Our people focus on the most important thing, you. When you call, you'll speak to a real person. No robotic scripts, no computer says no, just an honest conversation with someone who actually wants to help. Join the millions who've already made the move. Octopus Energy, recommended by which a record 9 years running. Visit octopus.energy/better for verification.
At PensionBee, we believe that when your pension is in a good place, you're in a good place. Download the app or go to pensionbee.com and be pension confident when investing your capital is at risk.
McDonald's breakfast is turning up the heat with a spicy new twist. Calm down, not that spicy. Breakfast is for savouring, not suffering. Introducing McDonald's breakfast with Frank's Red Hot Ketchup. A spicy breakfast, suitable for the morning. Until 8th of June, served until 11 a.m, subject to availability.
Octopus Energy. Great value and outstanding customer service. Recommended by which? A record 9 years running.
Iain Dale on LBC.
7:20 on LBC. Well, let's have a word with Dame Diana Johnson, Labour Employment Minister and MP for Kingston upon Hull North and Cottingham. Diana, very good evening. Now, what's been happening in Hull? Because that's been a Lib Dem council in recent years, hasn't it? What's happened in your local patch?
It has been a Lib Dem council, and the Lib Dems lost control last night. We had elected 10 reform councillors. Labour didn't do terribly well. We lost councillors as well, and we held one Labour councillor in my constituency. So not a good night for Labour, or actually for the Lib Dems in Hull.
Now, on a scale of 1 to 10, and I do want a 1 to 10 answer on this one, if you wouldn't mind, Diana, how bad has it been for Labour?
I think it has been really bad. It's hard to say. 7, 8, 9. I mean, I think it's bad. I'm not here to say, that last night and today's announcements have been good at all. It's bad. And I also wanted to say there are many people who've stood for all the parties, actually, who haven't been successful. And I think we should thank them, because standing to be a councillor or a politician, it involves a lot of hard work. And I think we should thank them, and I think we should congratulate those who've won. But now the real hard work starts, and particularly for those new councillors from the Greens and the Reform Party, they have to deliver on what they've promised to their local electorate. But it's absolutely been bad for Labour. I accept that.
One of the things I've noticed with your colleagues doing media rounds today is that they've all said more or less exactly the same thing as they said this time last year, that the electorate want us to deliver faster. Well, I mean, in a way, that's quite obvious, isn't it? But you can't say that every single year and expect the electorate to swallow it. And we've had Louise Haigh on the program on the LBC earlier today saying, well, we've got to give Keir Starmer another year, and if he hasn't performed by next May, then he'll have to go. And I'm thinking, what a wimpish thing to say. If you think he isn't credible and it can't do the job, well, then say so now. Don't sort of hang him out to dry for another year.
Well, can I say this to you, Ian? I've been a MP now for over 20 years. The bulk of my time as an MP has been in opposition. We've now got a Labour government. We are 2 years in. Parliaments normally last 4 or 5 years, as you know. We're 2 years in. We're just on the cusp, it seems to me, of starting to see the delivery of some of the manifesto commitments we made. Things around employment rights, getting the waiting list down in the NHS, lifting 500,000 children out of poverty. Now, people may say we want this to happen much quicker and faster, and of course we all do, but I really believe we will start to see the delivery of what Labour stood on in 2024. But I also accept we've been terrible, I think, at setting out our vision and what we want for this country and bringing communities together. So I think there's a really big job of work that we have to do, and I think the Prime Minister recognised that this morning in his comments when he talked about how he's going to have to set out in the next few days with the King's speech and other announcements about what Labour is going to do for this country.
I think you're absolutely right in that there's been, well, if there is a vision, there's been very few cabinet ministers able to articulate it. But that does imply that there therefore needs to be some sort of personnel changes. Now, you're a government minister. You're not going to come on this programme and call for Keir Starmer to go. I get that. But do you think it might be time for Keir Starmer to sort of freshen up his team, bring some new faces in, concentrate on people who actually can go in front of the cameras or microphones and articulate this vision that the Prime Minister says he has but seems unable to articulate himself?
Well, I think after these election results, I'm sure the Prime Minister and the Cabinet will be reflecting on what the public have been saying to us all on the doorsteps. and will want to make sure that he's got the best possible people around him getting that message out. So it's above my pay grade, as you can appreciate, as to any changes that are made by the Prime Minister. But I certainly think, we have got some really good people out there at the moment. I just think we need to hone our message, and we need to start seeing the delivery of what we promised we would do in our manifesto. And I think that will start to happen. I was the policing minister before I was the employment minister, and I know there are 3,000 more police officers and PCSOs in our neighbourhoods, in our communities, providing that reassurance to people about safety and security. That's important. That's what people say to me when I talk to people in Hull. They want to feel safe in their local area, and we are starting to deliver. So that's important. We get that message out too.
Quick answer, if you would, on this. Angela Rayner, would you like to see her back in the cabinet now?
Look, I'm just a junior minister here, Ian. You know.
I know, but you'll have views.
I have lots of views. I certainly have lots of views. And I want the best people to be in front of the cameras. Of course I do, and in the cabinet and in ministerial positions. And we've got some great people in the Parliamentary Labour Party. So I think Keir's got a lot of people to choose from.
Well, I think he should choose you for the cabinet, but I don't expect you to comment on that either. Diana, thank you very much indeed. That's Dame Diana Johnson there, Labour's Employment Minister, MP for Kingston upon Hull North and Cottingham. Well, over the next half an hour or so, we're going to head around the country for the latest from our reporters. Let's first of all go to Alex Taylor-Brown, who is LBC's Yorkshire correspondent, who joins us from Barnsley, where there have been big events. Alex.
Big events indeed, Ian. The headlines from Yorkshire are reform taking both the Labour strongholds of Barnsley and Wakefield. They'd been Labour since their inception in the early 1970s. It could be described as seismic, but also half expected, really. Nigel Farage, on a recent tour up to Yorkshire, told me that he was confident about their campaigns in both Barnsley and Wakefield, and it's proved that here as well. We heard from Sir Steve Horton, the outgoing leader of Barnsley Council for Labour. He said, you know what, this was the local election that never was. People went to the polls with those national issues in mind. We've paid the price after all the work we've done here in Barnsley over the last few years. And now we've got to dust ourselves down and be in opposition. Now, they might have been successful here, Reform, tonight, but there's been a blanket no to any media interviews from the broadcast anyway. I did ask the chairman, Edward Dillingham, if he'd be up for a chat to us for LBC. I got a flat no. Ian, maybe I've got one of those faces. It has been a long day, but a refusal there to chat to us. In Sheffield as well, the Labour leader, Tom Hunt of the council, losing his seat by only 70 votes after a recount that was as well. No overall control, it remains there. You mentioned about Sheffield Heeley MP Louise Haigh for Labour, telling us that Sir Keir Starmer cannot lead the Labour into the next general election. That was her sort of strong feelings around that. In Leeds, Labour, they've lost control there. That's fallen into no overall control, with gains for Reform, gains for the Greens, some Tory holds as well. And in Bradford, we're going to get the full results of that tomorrow, but it could look incredibly fractured. Rise of the Green vote, a core independent vote there, and also the rise of Reform as well. The leader there, Labour's Susan Hinchcliffe, she has lost her seat, but we'll get the full results of that tomorrow. So that Labour stronghold here in so many councils has slipped. And we'll hear from Joseph Draper now in central London.
Yeah, well, Ian, one area in the whole country, really, where Labour should have been safe was here. That band of Labour-held councils across the east of London, across the north of London, even here in Camden, they narrowly held on, really by the skin of their teeth. But there were lots of anxious Labour faces in that room today as they saw seat after seat, Ian, falling to Green and Liberal Democrat candidates, including the council's own Labour leader, who lost to a Green candidate earlier today. And I think really it's only because of that split in the vote that they held on here, but not so elsewhere in London. In Hackney, where I was earlier, Diane Abbott's parliamentary constituency, of course, which elected the country's first ever Green mayor this afternoon, and they're poised, I'm told, according to contacts on the ground there, to take full control of the council in the next hour or so. They're just 7 seats away, I'm told, from taking a majority there. So that looks like it's going to go to the Greens as well. And of course, we've seen in Lewisham, we have a second Green Party mayor there as well this afternoon. And Waltham Forest as well this evening has gone to the Greens from Labour, who've held that council. With few exceptions, really, since the 1970s, all of these areas should have been safe places for the Labour Party when they were getting hammered by reform across the country. But it shows that even here, Ian, in their own backyards, they're vulnerable.
Thank you very much indeed, Joseph and Alex. Well, we'll go to some other counts in regions around the country shortly, and we'll also be talking to the newly elected Green Party Mayor of Hackney, Zoe Garbett, who you will have seen on Cross Question a couple of times. She's fought an absolutely brilliant campaign there. We'll hear all about it in just a moment. It's 7:30 on LBC. Time for the news headlines with Amelia Cox.
The most testing day of Sir Keir Starmer's time in number 10 isn't over yet as local election results continue to roll in. Labour have suffered a historic loss in Wales, while Reform UK is celebrating more than 1,200 new council seats in England. The Greens are also up by close to 300 new councillors and 3 local authorities. The SNP are claiming victory in Scotland, while Plaid Cymru have won the most seats in the Welsh Parliament. Former First Minister Eluned Morgan has lost her seat in the Senedd and called for change driven by Labour in Westminster. The Conservatives have also shed votes, while the Lib Dems have made positive gains. LBC weather, showers easing for most overnight with clear spells developing, rain lingering in northern England and southeast Scotland, lows of 2 degrees.
Elections 2026. Follow it live on LBC.
You've packed enough suitcases to know quality when you see it. Well, Saga Travel Insurance has been named a Which Best Buy. And now get 20% off when you buy before the 11th of June. Search Saga Travel Insurance for a quote today. New policies only. Standard and Plus are Which Best Buys May 2025. Terms and conditions apply. Over 50s only.
Daniel liked how easy it was to transfer his old pensions to PensionBee.
I've had quite an eclectic career, and with that I'd amassed pensions from a couple of different providers. I signed up using the app. It was really straightforward. I was able to give them a couple of key facts about each of my pensions, and then PensionBee did the rest of the work for me.
At PensionBee, we believe that when your pension is in a good place, you're in a good place. Download the app or go to pensionbee.com and be pension confident. When investing, your capital is at risk.
May we have your attention? Introducing the Volkswagen May event. Get an extra £1,000 towards your finance deposit with Solutions PCP 7.9% APR representative across the range, including the amazing Golf, Tiguan, and all-electric ID3. Major. I said it was in May, right?
Yes.
Ends Monday the 18th of May. Visit your nearest Volkswagen retailer. You may just find the car you've been looking for.
Stop it.
Participating retailers. Excludes T-Roc ID bars and Golf GTI 50. ID3 from stock only. Indemnities may be required. Registered by 30th of August. Volkswagen Finance.
Iain Dale on LBC. Text 84850.
7:33 on LBC. Well, I think one of the big stories of today is the fact that the Green Party has won not just one, but so far 2 mayoral elections in London. In what was the one that Joseph Draper just said? I can't remember. Was it Lewisham, I think? But also Hackney. Zoe Garbett is the newly elected Green Party Mayor of Hackney. Zoe, thank you for coming on tonight. How does it feel, Madam Mayor?
It's really, really exciting. It's incredible. I've just absolutely loved campaigning, meeting so many residents, going out and about, speaking to organisations. We developed our manifesto from everything we've heard, our casework. And it's just incredible to get this amount of support from residents of Hackney getting behind our plans and just being able to deliver them and seeing what a Green-led council could look like in London. It's really exciting.
And you aren't some Johnny-come-lately candidate here, are you? You've been campaigning for this for some time. You're also a member of the London Assembly. Do you have to give up? Maybe you have to give
Yes,
up.
I'm going to be resigning from the London Assembly. So I'm going to stay. I don't have to, but I am going to stay so I can focus on Hackney, yeah.
I mean, do you put this victory down to the fact that you have been campaigning locally for a very, very long time? How much do you put it down to the revival of the Green Party under Zach Polanski? And how much do you put it down to the fact that people seem to be not very much in favour of Labour at the moment?
Yeah, I think it's a combination of those factors. So people tell us on the doorstep that they feel incredibly let down and they're looking for that alternative. And I think, they're frustrated with, the Labour government on national issues, but some of the failings locally too. But I definitely feel we've had a growing story in Hackney. We had 2 people elected in 2022, me and Alistair Binney-Lubbock. And then we won a by-election in 2024. We've worked really hard on local and borough-wide issues, and people have seen how hard we're working in that alternative. We've brought different voices into the government, into the chamber. We've really diversified the people and the campaigns that the council hears from. And this campaign we were running at a scale that we've never delivered at before, and it's just incredible to see that response. But and it's a lot of the new members, and the scale we've been able to deliver at is because of Zach's election in September and just people getting more and more involved.
And the fact that the council, I think, is going to have a Green majority as well, that gives you real power, doesn't it? But you won't be able to, the council can't blame you for things, you can't blame the council. You will actually be able to implement things. What's the first thing you're going to do that people will actually notice?
So there's a number of things we want to do. We want to get the basics right and sort out some like the Hackney repair services for council tenants. But one of the things I'm committing to kicking off as soon as I can is a Who Owns Hackney review, and looking at the buildings and the spaces in the borough and getting those back into community use, because I go to countless community organisations. I've been to a food bank, the night shelter, organisations supporting young people who are all like, I could do so much more if I could access more space. There's a local guy selling coffee outside Dalston Junction Station who's really keen to get into a cafe with other organisations. I just want to really unblock a lot of those issues locally, get our high streets back up and running, and just get community groups into these spaces that people see empty all the time, get our community centres back up and running. There's just loads we want to do around community space.
And just finally, you've run a very local campaign, but the Green Party nationally, the campaign has been dominated in part by Zach Polanski, in part by sort of foreign affairs issues, in part some of the comments that he's made about the Golders Green attack. How much did that affect your campaign? And did you worry that the national issues might have been detrimental to your campaign?
I mean, I know that residents are really voting for parties that really align with their values. Like, national issues came up all the time on the doorstep, but usually in line with wanting to see an end to the complicity in the genocide in Palestine. And we have had many conversations with residents on the doorstep about a number of issues. I think the result shows that people were still very much with us, like definitely with the mayoral campaign, and we've seen lots of Green councillors elected. Still, the count's still going on in Hackney, so much more to report. But people are voting for a number of reasons, but I don't think it's been detrimental.
Zach Polanski has come into the headlines for making a comment in the last 24 hours about no country, including Israel, having a right to exist. Do you agree with your leader on that?
I haven't been up to speed on what's been happening with what Zach's been saying outside of Hackney at the moment, actually, because I'm just being fully focused on Hackney. I very much think that people in areas get the right to determine the existence of the places that they live in. I very much believe in local autonomy and people's human rights. So, yeah.
Well, Zoe, I look forward to having a full-blooded mayor on Cross Question in the next couple of months.
Yes,
I hope you'll come on and tell us how it's all going. Thank you very much indeed, and renewed congratulations. That's Zoe Garbett, newly elected Green Party Hackney mayor. Aggie Chambray, I've followed her campaign over the past couple of years, and whether you're a Green or not, it's been an impressive campaign that she's fought, and very different, I think, from some of the other Green campaigns where she's really concentrated. I mean, she talked about some guy running a little coffee shop outside a tube station, helping him get. I mean, that's the sort of thing that the Liberal Democrats are usually famous for in local politics, isn't it?
Indeed, and she obviously led a highly successful local campaign. I know Hackney well, and I do wonder whether actually she might have won anyway, because I think lots of people in Hackney, we're going to see it in the council, according to Joseph Draper, but are voting Green anyway and turning from Labour to Green, which is no small feat at all for the Green Party. But obviously she did lead a very successful campaign and has now won the mayoralty for the first time, it not being Labour in its history.
Right, well, let's talk to our reporters in Wales and Scotland, because there's we were talking to Gareth a moment ago about the momentous results in Wales. The Scottish results aren't all in yet, but we'll get an update on that in a moment. But first, let's cross to Cardiff and talk to LBC's Wales editor, Mike Hughes. Well, it's all counted now. Has it shaken down how you thought it would?
Do you know what? I think if we take it from a Labour perspective, I think this result has even caught them by surprise. Forget about being kicked out of power and this being a historic day for all the wrong reasons for them. But they've managed to only get 9 MSs elected after all the counting is done. I really think that's at the proper bottom end of their expectations. I think they were really hoping for more. Bearing in mind that the narrative throughout this election campaign has been, we're going to defy the polls. You know, don't read into the polls. Not a single ballot has been cast yet. This has gone all the wrong way. I mean, this is Disastersville for Labour. So they have got a long way to go before they are anywhere close to power here. 9 MSs out of 96 possible seats. I mean, it's about as bad as it gets. On the flip side, this is a historic day for Wales. Bookmark it, because you've got Plaid Cymru here who have their hands on the levers of power here. And I think the amount of seats they get, 43, I honestly think that's at the top end of their expectations. So they'll be very pleased today. The disruptors in chief, Reform UK, are back in the Welsh Parliament. Now, they've never been here under Reform, but Nigel Farage's party of UKIP and the Brexit Party have had previous representation here. And the Conservatives, I think they will be quite pleased with today. They avoided a wipeout. They weren't entirely cannibalised by Reform UK. They've managed to get 7 MSs elected. That's enough to form a group inside the Senedd. I think who will be disappointed will be the Greens. They've only managed to get 2. There was talk of 6, possibly 12 Green MSs being elected here. They've only managed to get 2 over the line. One of those is their leader, Anthony Slaughter. And Kel Surprise, it's Groundhog Day for the Liberal Democrats. 1 single MS elected. You saw Jane Dodds only last week, Ian. It is, they are singly represented in the Senedd once again. So it's a massive day for Plaid Cymru. Rhina Piorwedd, I believe, is hot-footing it down to Cardiff tonight to start talks. Reform UK, well, they are the principal opposition in the Senedd now. So an absolutely enormous day.
And I mean, it's difficult when you look at the mathematics. It's quite difficult to see how a coalition could be formed unless it was between Plaid and Labour. But I can't see what's in it for Plaid to do that. So do you think it's more likely that they will want to run a minority administration?
Well, that's certainly what they've been telling us over the past few weeks. Their overall plan, I mean, bearing in mind no one's ever had a majority here. So, the Senedd is designed to spur cooperation. So, they've always been factoring in that they are going to have to work with other parties. They are just short of a majority. They've got 43, 49 is what you need for a majority. Labour are really the only party that are going to align, I think, totally, with the exception of the Greens, who also believe in independence, but align with a lot of the policy ideas and the policy areas of Plaid Cymru. But it won't be a coalition. This is going to be some sort of agreement or confidence and supply or whatever. But it feeds into the narrative, and you can expect this in the weeks and months ahead of what Reform UK have been saying throughout this campaign. Vote Plaid, get Labour. That's pretty much what's going to happen, I think. Mike, thank you very much indeed. That's Mike Hughes, LBC's Wales editor. Well, let's cross north to north of the border with Gina Davidson, our Scotland political editor. The SNP have been effectively re-elected, but with fewer seats than they had last time, it seems. Gina, very good evening. I mean, looking at the mathematics here, I don't think all of the results are quite in yet, are they? I think we've got 91 out of the 129 seats. How do you think it's going to end up?
Yes, we're still waiting on the regional list votes to be counted, Ian. They are the ones that are the proportional representation side of how the electoral system works here. So they will make sure that there are more Labour MSPs, more Conservatives, and of course Reform MSPs in Holyrood, and indeed even more Greens. Greens have had a very good day, and I'll get onto that in a second. But if obviously the SNP are going to be the largest group, we knew that was going to happen. I mean, the polls were all pointing that way right throughout this campaign. The question was just how large. John Swinney wanted to have that overall majority, something that they managed to achieve back in 2011. You'll remember when Alex Salmond was leading the party and they went on to have that independence referendum. John Swinney has said that is what needs to happen again if they're to have a second shot at having another referendum. It looks like they're going to fall short of that because they have lost some seats and they've lost some government ministers. I mean, one of the big beasts, Angus Robertson, who you no doubt will know, yes. Ian, used to lead the Westminster group for the SNP before Ian Blackford and Stephen Flynn even. He lost his seat in Edinburgh Central today. He came in third behind Labour and behind the Scottish Greens, who won their very first constituency seat in a Holyrood election. Now, of course, they've had MSPs here before, but they've always been on the regional list. But they not only won in Edinburgh Central, unseating Angus Robertson, but they also won in Glasgow Southside. Now, that is the constituency that was held by Nicola Sturgeon for a very long time. She, of course, stood down, wasn't running in this election, but Kokab Stewart, who was the Equalities Minister, she was standing in that seat, and she also lost out to the Scottish Greens. So they have two constituency MSPs to come back into this building with next week. So they've had a very good night, as have the Liberal Democrats. We have seen quite a surge from them. We're still obviously waiting for some votes to come in, but they have taken the Caithness seat from the SNP. Now, that was held by Marie Todd, who was the drugs minister, and she has lost her seat. And they've also taken the seat of Edinburgh Northern, which is a new seat, but notionally was supposed to go to the SNP, but they've taken that as well. So they are having a very good night. Who isn't? Well, of course, it's Labour, just as they've had across the rest of the UK. Now, they've been talking up their chances all through this campaign. Anna Sarwar urging voters to at least give him a chance, a 5-year chance after giving the SNP 20 years. And the voters have said absolutely not. Now, they have 3 constituency seats at this point, which admittedly is one up on what they've had before, because they've taken the Western Isles from the SNP. But we'll have to wait and see how many they actually gain on the regional list. And Anna Sarwar threw in the towel pretty early today. 7 seats had been decided at that point, and he admitted that Labour were not going to succeed in this election. So a bad day for him.
I've got to ask you to be brief on this, Gina, but what about Reform UK? Because at the moment they've only got 5 seats, and yet they were tipped to come second.
Yes, well, I mean, they haven't won any constituencies. There's been no breakthrough in the constituencies which they had hoped to. In fact, all they appear to have done is take votes from the Conservatives, allowing the SNP to come through the middle in some seats or to cling on in others, Banff and Buchan being one of them. The SNP held on to that by just 300 votes. So they haven't won any constituencies. Malcolm Offord, the leader here, says he's disappointed in that, but they hope to pick up many more on the regional list year. Whether or not they will come second, or whether or not maybe some of those polls that we thought were wildly out of sync, which put the Greens in second place, will actually come true. We'll have to wait and see once all the votes are counted, Ian.
And that will be tonight?
That will be tonight. That will be done and dusted, hopefully, by about 8:30.
All right. Gina, thank you very much indeed. That's Gina Davidson's LBC's Scotland political editor. Now, let's turn our attention back to England, where the Conservatives have also been suffering some big losses in some of their heartlands. Let's first of all go to Emma Core, LBC's South East of England correspondent. Emma, good evening. What's been happening in your patch?
Good evening, Ian. Well, we've had results coming in thick and fast across West Sussex this afternoon and evening. It has been declared now that county council, no overall control, but it's a multicoloured map. The Lib Dems have performed well, taking swathes of the area, including Chichester, where I was earlier. The Reforms holding on as well to some true blue areas. Reform had gained a few, maybe not as many seats as they wanted to. And the Greens as well have populated that map, and Labour have also held on to a few seats. So West Sussex really is a multicoloured map. The biggest shock of the day here in the South East, though, is how well perhaps Reform have done in East Sussex. They were predicted to take a few seats. But they were only then a few seats from taking the whole council. It has now gone to no overall control. It was, as I said, anticipated that they would take seats. And this, of course, perhaps to do with what has been going on in Crowborough, how that has affected the county. That's the Crowborough camp and the asylum seekers living there. It's caused lots of tension locally. Nigel Farage has put a lot of time and made himself known down there, and has a lot of presence in that area over the past few weeks. So he has picked up rather a few votes right across East Sussex. What's interesting, though, is the Greens have also made sizable gains there. So side by side, you've got lots of Reform seats side by side with Green seats. So it really is an interesting picture. And the Greens have done well in Hastings as well, Ian.
And that's happening over quite a lot of the country, where Reform, the Greens are doing well in the same areas. Thank you very much indeed, Emma. Shivani Sharma joins us, LBC's East of England correspondent. Well, Shivani, as far as I can see, in Norfolk, Suffolk and Essex, one-way traffic for Reform.
Couldn't have gone better for them, really, could it, Ian? They got a bit of a clean sweep there. Essex, in particular, if we start there, that is one of the areas where Reform have had some of their biggest successes. Essex County Council was controlled, as you know, by the Conservatives for more than 20 years. So that was a huge thing for Reform to take over that council. But it wasn't just the county council. It was areas like Basildon, Rochford, Southend as well, where they picked up gains. Epping, where I was at the count today, previously considered to be a Conservative stronghold. And I was watching Conservative councillors deflated in that room one by one as Reform candidates were winning their various seats. When I was speaking to Reform candidates, they were saying Tory councillors have taken locals here for granted. They haven't done enough on issues like asylum hotels, which we know were a big issue in Epping. By contrast, Chris Whitbread, the leader of that council, Conservative, he said he felt that these elections had been hijacked by Reform people coming up and trying to make this about national issues like stopping the boats, which he felt wasn't very fair. Suffolk, as you say, a county council where Reform have made a big gain. Norfolk, an area I know that you know well, is a really interesting one. You mentioned a moment ago about Reform and Green winning side by side. Well, Norfolk is a great example of that. The Greens winning for the first time Norwich City Council after all those years of Labour dominance. Not just so interesting because of the novelty in that, but because they've done that side by side, this dominance of Reform UK across Norfolk. I think they were just shy of 3 seats for a majority on Norfolk County Council, but still very much the dominant force there. I think the only reason why they didn't get an outright majority is because Rupert Lowe's new party, Great Yarmouth First, split the right-wing vote there. But Norfolk, extremely interesting because it's showing the patterns of voter behaviour turning away from those two main parties and instead very much looking for alternatives, in particular Reform UK.
Shivani, thank you very much indeed. We'll hear more from various other regions throughout the programme. You're listening to LBC at 7:52.
This is LBC.
Experience. It's knowing the difference between a good deal and, well, a great deal. Saga Travel Insurance covers most pre-existing medical conditions and has been named a Which Best Buy. Smart choice. And right now you can get 20% off travel insurance until the 11th of June. Search Saga Travel Insurance for a quote today. New policies only, subject to medical screening. Standard and Plus or Which Best Buys May 2025. Terms and conditions apply. Over 50s only.
Listeners, we interrupt the airwaves to share an incredible discovery. The reason why Britain hasn't been so great of late is because the country hasn't been eating enough Weetabix. We must get to work in rebuilding Great Britain, Bix by Bix. By delivering Weetabix to whoever plans the traffic diversions, to delivery drivers who can't seem to find your house, and people who don't stack the dishwasher properly. To Britain, we must say, have you had your Weetabix?
Now, listen carefully.
I want you to think of selling your car. Who's going to buy that car? Keep thinking. Struggling to know where to look? On Motorway, there are 7,500 verified dealers who are ready and waiting to bid on your car. It's not magic, it's Motorway. Sell your car today at motorway.co.uk.
You know what you're getting with a conference. Laptop backpacks. Security pass lanyard.
If you could just pop this on.
Being asked, how was your journey in?
How was your journey in?
An array of triangular sandwiches. Having to deal with a small crisis back at the office. Sometimes in life you just know what you're getting. Like a great night's sleep and a tasty breakfast. You know what you're getting with Premier Inn.
This is LBC with Iain Dale. Call 0345 6060 973.
7:54 on LBC. Right, let's have a chat with Stuart Andrew, who's the Conservative Shadow Health Secretary and MP for Daventry. Stuart, welcome. Not a great day for the Conservatives. You lost nearly 500 seats so far, with still quite a few to go. Are there any crumbs of comfort that you can draw from this?
Yeah, I think there are. Look, I mean, first of all, of course, I acknowledge, for those colleagues that we've lost, that's been incredibly painful. And, thoughts are with them completely. However, the fact is that we've gained seats and councils in places that people would not have expected us to have won so soon after such a huge defeat at the general election. So Westminster, for example, and in Wandsworth, for example, holding on to places like Bexley, where, Reform was saying to us they were going to win that and they were going to take it from us. Harlow, the same. So there are some, crumbs of comfort there. I think what I would say is that I was campaigning, obviously, last year in my own constituency because we had the local elections here then. And if I'm being really honest, it was really hard to get people to even talk to us, let alone listen to us. The difference this time round is that people have been saying to me on the doorstep as I've gone, whether it be in London, whether I've been in Solihull or up in Leeds, people have been talking about how impressed they've been with Kemi and how she is actually, really bringing, sort of holding the government to account. She is clearly gaining that popularity. What we need to see now is the party following that as well. So I think that's the work that we have to do, being completely honest.
But that is quite a challenge, isn't it? Because at the moment you've got a Prime Minister who's the most unpopular Prime Minister, according to the polls, ever, of any Prime Minister. And yet it's Reform UK that are making the running here, leaving you trailing in their wake. I mean, OK, there's 3 years to go before an election, but that is a massive challenge. And if the party can't regain the popularity that its leader clearly has engendered over the past 6 months or so, it's going to be a thankless task.
Well, I don't think it is, because let's put it this way. So last year, people were sort of saying about Kemi. Now they're saying how brilliant she is and how she's really holding Keir Starmer, the government, to account. She's the one that's been doing the hard work and has forced those U-turns on the winter fuel allowance, on Chagos and so on. It's not been reformed because they've hardly been in Parliament making the case for us. What we have got to get the party in the same position as her. I'm confident we can do that because she's really starting to make an impact. I have noticed a huge difference on the doorstep from last year. And if we can keep that momentum going, then I think we can start to make that progress. I completely accept that Reform have had a good night. Completely accept that. But let's see what people actually start to see from Reform now that they're in control. I've had that in my area. They took control of the council last year and they got elected on a promise of not raising taxes. They've gone up by nearly 5%.
OK, well, let's stick with talking about the Conservative Party, though, because do you not think it's up to you and your shadow cabinet colleagues to up your game? Because Kemi's getting all of the publicity because she's obviously proved rather good at it. But there are too many people in the shadow cabinet who maybe haven't got the media profile that you need to make some sort of breakthrough. Does she not need... I'm not asking you to sort of like fall on your sword and make a space for somebody else, but that would be asking too much, wouldn't it? But do you understand what I'm saying here? This has got to be a team effort, and at the moment, there are quite a few members of the shadow cabinet that most of my listeners don't really know.
Do you know what? Fair point. And I know I've got to up my game. I'm one of those in that shadow cabinet, and I've got to try and learn from what Kemi's done and make sure that we are very much as a team. We are working as a team in a way that I haven't seen for quite a long time within the party. I'm not sure that we're probably getting that across enough, and that is the responsibility for that lies with people like myself. But Kemi is definitely making a huge difference. It's time for us to show that, that what we're doing privately in terms of working as a team, we articulate very publicly so that people can see that we are the party with the serious, well thought through alternative policies to this dreadful government, and that we will be the ones that really ultimately need to be the ones that people vote for to see the change that this country desperately needs.
Well, Stuart, I'm going to judge you in upping your game. If you appear on my programme at least twice in the next month, I would think, yeah, he's upped his game, he deserves to stay.
Fair point.
Thank you very much indeed. That's Stuart Andrew, Conservative Shadow Health Secretary and MP for Daventry. Right, coming up in the next hour, we will be taking some of your calls, believe it or not. We'll also have a few more words with Aggie Chambray before we give her, I'm not going to say an early night, but I mean, she has... You put in a bit of a shift, haven't you, Aggie, over the past 24 hours, let's put it that way.
I've been here for quite some time.
You have. And Gareth Knight will be still here with us throughout the programme. We'll be hearing from the SNP, we'll be hearing from the Liberal Democrats, and also Sir Andrew Mitchell, Conservative MP for Sutton Coldfield, getting their reaction to the results. And as I say, I want to hear from you. We've got quite a few calls already on the board, but we could do with some more. 0345 6060 973 is the number to call here on LBC.
On your radio, on the LBC app, and
Play LBC.
Leading Britain's conversation. This is LBC.
From Global's newsroom at 8 o'clock. Sir Keir Starmer's position is coming under new pressure this evening following Labour's losses in the local council elections. The party has lost over 1,000 seats and the control of 28 local authorities so far. LBC's deputy political editor Aggie Chambray has been telling Iain Dale calls are already being made for the Prime Minister to step down.
Conor Naismith, just to pick a name at random, a Labour MP saying it is clear to me we need new leadership. But I wonder whether more damaging is the senior Labour MPs, like ones I've spoken to, like Louise Haigh, who's head of what's called the Tribune Group, former Transport Secretary, of course, calling for him to basically be gone by the next set of elections, which are, of course, next year, unless things have significantly changed.
Sir Keir Starmer has taken responsibility for Labour's disastrous showing. It's lost control of Sunderland Council to Reform UK and also Barnsley to the same party after 50 years in charge there. LBC's elections commentator Gareth Knight says that result is highly significant.
The governing party is losing councils that it would never in a million years have expected to lose. And I think losing Barnsley is as big a news story as you're going to get. It's the equivalent of when the Conservatives famously lost Tunbridge Wells in the 90s. It was one of those moments where you just thought that could surely never happen.
Reform has taken more than 1,200 seats. It also has its first elected MSPs in Scotland, in the shape of Angela Ross, Helen McDade and Julie McDougall. In Wales, Plaid Cymru is now the biggest party in the nation's Senedd. LBC's Wales editor is Mike Hughes.
If we take it from a Labour perspective, I think this result has even caught them by surprise. Forget about being kicked out of power. They've managed to only get 9 MSs elected after all the counting is done. I really think that's at the bottom end of their expectations.
In other news this evening, another person is being questioned by police investigating the arson attack on 4 volunteer ambulances at Golders Green in North London. The 48-year-old has become the 9th person to be arrested. And a US jet has fired on 2 Iranian oil tankers which were heading for Iran. It's accused them of breaching the American blockade of ports. In the city, the FTSE 100 closed down 43 points at 10,233. The pound will buy $1.36 and €1.15. LBC weather, clear spells for much of the country overnight, but rain could well persist in the far north of England. Chilly in places, leading to a patchy frost, and fog also in some places, a low of around 4 degrees. From Global's newsroom, for LBC, I'm Tim Daly.
This is LBC from Global, leading Britain's conversation with Iain Dale.
Very good evening. It's 4 minutes past 8 here on LBC. We are going through a lot of the election results, getting new results all of the time. Just looking at the number of seats that each party has and how much they've gained and lost. The Liberal Democrats were on gains of 93, but that suddenly dipped to 84. Not quite sure why that is. Gareth Knight is here, LBC's elections commentator, and Aggie Chambray, LBC's deputy political editor. A text here from Steve, Gareth. Why aren't the Liberal Democrats performing better than they are? Now, they have won a couple of councils, haven't they? Portsmouth, Stockport. But I was expecting that number of gains to be in the low hundreds.
So since Ed Davey became leader of the Liberal Democrats, they've really focused their attention on the home counties, on disillusioned Conservative voters, people that you would have expected to have voted Conservative for a long time, possibly held their nose in 2019, stayed with Boris and then moved away for 2024. And the Liberal Democrats have really focused on them. They seem to still have some patches in the north where they do quite well, but all their focus is on the southeast. And a lot of the time what we can see with these being local elections is the Liberal Democrats are really discovering how to work the first past the post system, how to really target specific areas.
Time. Taken them 80 years.
So a lot of the time you don't see them getting those big taking control of a council overall. But if you look beneath
although they
numbers,
are about, apparently, Chris informs me, because it's his local area, so he's looking at this very closely. East Surrey County Council is about to go Lib Dem massively, he says, and they've won West Surrey too.
So I think East Surrey in particular has had no end of issues to do with housing development, and the Liberal Democrats are exceptionally good at campaigning on that issue. It is a key Greenbelt area against them, yeah. Depends on what area. I know that you're dying to say it depends on what area it is, depending on what their stance is. But in East Surrey, it is very much campaigning against. But when you look down at all these councils, we constantly refer to no overall control. No overall control, more often than not, means there's a decent number of Liberal Democrats that are holding the balance of power in that council. And if you look down into the figures, you can see that all over the place. And even if you look at the Welsh result that we've just been discussing, the Liberal Democrats are not doing particularly well there. But every single vote in a situation like that counts, and they wield an awful lot of power for a party that doesn't necessarily gain a lot of seats. And when they can exploit the first past the post system in the way that Labour and the Conservatives have done for decades, they're really able to make their voices heard. And they are having a good night, and Ed Davey will be happy, but he'll probably wish that he had some big headlines to shout about, and that's what he's missing.
Mike in Guildford says, are you able to please explain what the crucial difference is between a majority-run council and no overall control? If it's a majority-run, do they get power of veto and final say, for example? Never thought I would get into local elections, but I am now. Good. Cheers in. P.S. You make local elections interesting. See, I'll take that as a compliment. Most people wouldn't think that's a compliment, but it is. Keep up the great work. Your enthusiasm is infectious, but it's a pity you don't live near me, Mike, because you could come and hear me spar with Mike Martin, my local Lib Dem MP, at the Tunbridge Wells Trinity Theatre tomorrow night, because the Lib Dems have just retained power in Tunbridge Wells as well, I think, as a majority. Anyway, so can just go into that about what it means to be no overall control.
So let's say you have a council with 50 seats on it. To have a majority of one, a majority of two, you would need 26 councillors. If no party or no group on the council gets 26 councillors, councillors, then it's in no overall control. That might mean that there's 25-25 and there has to be some sort of arrangement. It might mean that every party, there's 5 parties with 10 councillors each, and then there has to be some sort of coalition or what they call a confidence and supply arrangement to create a majority. So those people that will remember all the negotiations that took place after the 2010 general election between the Conservatives and the Liberal Democrats and Labour as well, that is the exact same scenario in council. So it's a hung council. What it basically means is that between the election and the council AGM, which is usually about 2 weeks after the election, there's a lot of horse trading that takes place, lots of negotiation about committee chairmanships and portfolios and things like this. It's all quite dull stuff, but for those people involved in the council, it can make a big difference.
Aggie Chambray, what's been the reaction from Keir Starmer's cabinet to these results today? I mean, have they all been sort of making very enthusiastic statements saying Keir Starmer's brilliant and obviously must stay?
I don't think I've heard anyone say today that Keir Starmer is brilliant. And
there is a reason for that.
And there potentially is a reason for that. I think it's the seismic local election results and, of course, the results in Scotland and Wales too. But most of his cabinet have posted on social media in support in a way. It's sort of this is bad, this is terrible, but this is not the time to change leader. This is not the time to look inward. I say most, but not all. There have been some notable absences so far of members of his cabinet tweeting. The Home Secretary, Shabana Mahmood, yet to tweet, and the Health Secretary, Wes Streeting, also yet to tweet. And there's a couple of tweets as well, posts, that I want to pull out. Number one is the Foreign Secretary, Yvette Cooper. She has written in the last hour, as I said earlier, these have been really tough results today, including in Wakefield. As the Prime Minister has said, this is now a time for serious, calm-headed reflection, because following these results, we must listen and respond, but do so in a steady, thoughtful and reflective way.
There's not much hurry there, because, I mean, that's the message all the other ministers have been saying. We've got to go faster. We've got to be in a hurry. That's not what Yvette Cooper's saying.
Yes, but I also think it's interesting that she says, as the PM has said, but then she doesn't say anything about he must stay, we can't look inward or anything like that, which her colleagues in the cabinet have also done. And Lisa Nandy, who is the culture secretary, has also tweeted something very similar to that, saying, as the Prime Minister says, it's clear the public are impatient for change and we must rise to meet this moment and deliver change on the scale that people need and have asked for. But again, not specifically saying that he should remain in post. So I think those are interesting to pull out. I'm not sure how much we should read into them, but it's that stage of the night where there are Labour MPs calling for him to go. There are Labour MPs calling for a timeline for him to set out to. So I think it is worth reading in to posts on social media and lack thereof of other ministers.
Great. Let's go to Chris in Richmond. Chris, what would you like to tell us?
Hi, Ian. Well, I think there's a few things. Firstly, locally in Richmond, the Lib Dems now have 54 seats out of 54, right? And
one-party state.
Well, of course, exactly. But the point is, the Greens had 4 or 5 councillors. They've lost every single one, and I suspect part of that is because of the shambolic behaviour of Mr. Polanski over the last 2 weeks.
What do you? So that's what you put it down to, and
well, and a good Lib and frankly also a good Lib Dem council that has fought very hard against government cuts and is knocking on doors, and a Tory party and a Reform party that stuck a leaflet from my door and didn't even engage at all. Didn't even bother except in one ward.
I've had this quite a lot from people saying on Twitter, it's outrageous, they haven't deserved my vote because no one's given me a leaflet. And I did respond, you do know that people aren't paid to do this, that they're all volunteers, and all political parties suffer from a dearth of volunteers to deliver leaflets or knock on doors. It's not quite as simple often as people think.
Well, no, true, but at the end of the day, if you lose your local council base, which Conservatives done, and they lost both their MPs in 2017 to 19, you lose your support, and at the end of the day, if people don't knock on doors and engage, it's very hard to come back from that position. I think the other thing that...
It is, but the Liberal Democrats are proof that you can do that, because their local government base was reduced to a real husk, wasn't it, in 2015 or so?
It was. No, it was, and I think that's how they built from the ground upwards. But the other point I wanted to make was about reform, right? You look at the week before an election, serious questions to answer about a significant, probably the biggest in nation's political history, 5 million quid. The leader of the party refuses to go on one of the 2 prime-time television shows on a Sunday morning. Yet, they are leading the polls. What does that say about the British electorate? They are not necessarily interested in, frankly, stuff that you and I would find as political geeks incredibly right, and frankly, a massive news story.
Well, it is a big news story, which and I find it rather odd that people accuse the media of not covering it, which is completely untrue.
Well, you did.
I did, and so have most of the other media. Well, but the fact is that you will criticise Reform supporters for not giving a jot about it, but in a sense, doesn't that go back to the whole sort of Brexit argument as to a lot of people didn't understand why people voted for Brexit. They just assumed that people were sort of thick or racist or ignorant or whatever, and made no effort to understand the reasons. Well, perhaps we should try and understand the reasons as to why Reform voters aren't as interested in this as you are.
Well, okay. There's a couple of points. Firstly, to unpack that. Firstly, I would say that at the end of the day, the Reform's results and in office, as I think your Tory person said earlier on, have been catastrophic in certain places. They've made ridiculous promise to cut council tax in an environment where every council, including mine, pretty much has been asked to make humongous savings. Social care bill is rising because we've got an ageing population. They've made undeliverable promises. It's been an utter car crash in places like Kent. It's shambolic, but yet people have still voted for them. So in a way, I'm going, do you know what? Fantastic. I don't have a Reform council. Let's see how they get on in the next 3 years. And I think, questions are going to be asked of Nigel Farage because locally, people vote for very different reasons, locally to nationally. And I think Nigel Farage will come under increasing scrutiny. And frankly, the BBC, not yourselves, the BBC need to hold Reform to account. If Zia Youssef is the most popular panellist in terms of numbers of times invited on, week after week, but then Nigel Farage won't turn up to the key show with Laura Kuenssberg, trying to make some changes. We've got to stop this ability for politicians of leading parties to pick and choose when they want to come on. LBC has been consistent, but
I'm afraid this happens with all parties at different times, where it's almost impossible to persuade someone to come on. If you notice that on most of the programmes that have covered the election over the past 24 hours, the parties are now saying that they don't want to come into the studio to do these programmes anymore. They want to do it all on Zoom. Well, yeah. I mean, I can understand that to an extent, but I mean, it's from an interviewer's point of view, it's so much more difficult interviewing somebody over Zoom because they can easily sort of wriggle out of something which maybe they wouldn't be able to do if you were looking them straight in the eye. Chris, thank you very much indeed. We are going to let Aggie go now, not before I tell you that Hamish says Aggie needs a pay rise. She should be the highest paid employee of LBC. She puts it in a proper shift every day. Well, Natasha Clark might have some views on that. Nick Ferrari might have some views on that. James O'Brien might have some views on that. Do you want to make any comment?
No, I don't. I want to.
Well, you could thank Hamish for the compliment.
Thank you, Hamish, for the compliment.
Well, thank you for all the work that you've put in over the past 24 hours or so. And as always, Aggie, because you are very hardworking.
Thank you, Iain.
We'll let you go now. Gareth Knight is staying with us. We're getting a couple of questions for you, Gareth, which we'll come to in a moment. And we'll also be talking to Stephen Gethins. He's the newly elected SNP MSP for Dundee City East. And he's going to have to step down from the House of Commons. So there's going to be a by-election, not just there, but also in Stephen Flynn's seat in Aberdeen. So we do love a by-election on LBC, don't we? 16 minutes past 8.
This is LBC.
Picture your car. You want to sell it, but you feel trapped by the chains of your finance deal. Now, listen closely. Hear that? That was the sound of your car selling and the cash hitting your account. It's easy to sell your financed car on Motorway. We'll handle the admin and pay off the finance for you. It's not magic, it's Motorway. Sell your car today at motorway.co.uk. Process may vary in case of negative equity.
The following is from TfL.
I got loads of flowers the other day and messages from people I didn't even know. My mates spelled out my name in tea lights, and my mom hung my favourite footy shirt on the railings next to the lamppost where I got killed by a nice lady, just someone who thought it was okay to go a few miles an hour over the limit.
Speeding injures or kills over 1,000 people in London every year. Slow down. To the Mayor of London and TfL, every journey matters.
Tesco Insurance are driving down the cost of motoring with 10% off car insurance. Take out a car insurance policy before the 15th of May 2026 and you'll get 10% off with club card prices. We offer a range of cover options, so you can choose the one that's right for you. Save 10% when you buy or renew a car policy with Tesco Insurance. Search Tesco Car Insurance and get a quote direct today. Club card required. Excludes add-ons. T's and C's apply.
Iain Dale. Text 84850. This is LBC.
18 minutes past 8 on LBC. Right, let's ask you this question, Gareth. It says, did the staff in the polling stations get paid or are they volunteers? They were working 6 a.m. to midnight. Amazing. What's the answer to that?
I believe they're paid, but the vast majority of them are council staff. So they tend to take some sort of deal with the council whereby I think they earn a day's holiday or something like that. It's the first time we've ever had that question. On all the years we've done election night, and I think that's the first time we've had it.
I think also that the counters at the count, they're often bank tellers.
Yeah.
If they still exist nowadays. I don't know.
They don't. Nowadays
they do get paid, but it's not an awful lot of money.
No, but returning officers are very aware of how long the counts go on for, which is always surprising that some of them seem to take so long to actually count the ballots because they are paid per hour. I think that the key thing here is that you do need your counting staff and your polling station staff to be as professional as possible. And it's quite well done the way it's worked out. There is training involved. They try and get a political balance of people in the polling station as well. And an awful lot of the work that these polling station staff do is quite important. They help blind people to vote and things like this. They escort people to the actual polling booth. It's not just a case of ticking a box, giving you a ballot paper, even though that's what most people see of them.
Jay is under the impression that you are Gareth Thomas MP. Can we just explain that you're not Gareth Thomas MP?
I'm not Gareth Thomas MP.
You're Gareth Knight, not MP.
No, I'm not Gareth Thomas MP. I'm also not Gareth Thomas, the rugby player. I'm Gareth Knight, yeah.
Fantastic. Right, let's talk to one of the winners in Scotland. It's Stephen Gethens. He's newly elected SNP MSP for Dundee City East. Now, he's currently a Member of Parliament in Westminster, so he's going to have to step down as an MP to take up his seat in Holyrood. Stephen, very good evening. First of all, congratulations. And have you already applied for the Chiltern Hundreds?
Thank you, Ian. No, I haven't. I'm not long home, actually, so... I thought one step at a time. But there's legislation that governs stepping down and all that kind of stuff. So that's recently passed at Holyrood.
Why did you stand in the 2024 general election if you knew that you were going to stand in this parliamentary election? Because effectively, you're now going to cost the taxpayer £100,000, aren't you?
I didn't know that I was going to stand. I think that it's important for me to go to Parliament that seem to be delivering more effectively for people in Scotland, and obviously I put myself up for people in Dundee City East to decide, and they decided in my favour in quite significant numbers as well, and I'm very grateful to them for having done so.
You were an MP in Fife. You're currently an MP in Arbroath, and now you're going to be an MSP for Dundee. I wouldn't be so rude as to call you a carpetbagger, but I mean, it's a bit odd, isn't it, to keep going for different areas?
So, Ian, I'd encourage you to read up on your geography of Scottish Parliament.
I know it's in the same kind of region, but...
It's not the same kind of region. Much of it overlaps. Scottish Parliamentary... I have 3 Scottish Parliamentary constituencies. My Westminster constituency, the heart of it is in Dundee City East. That's the, it's called Arbroath and Broughty Ferry. It's a wee bit confusing. I never quite liked the name Arbroath and Broughty Ferry because it wasn't quite reflective of the constituency. So I can see why there's maybe a little bit of confusion there, but there is a very, very significant chunk of the constituency. I'm afraid that the Holyrood and Westminster constituencies are not exactly the same, and so you're going to have some differences.
Now, Stephen Flynn, he's won his seat as well, so there's going to be another by-election. Yep. Is it just the two of you, or are there more?
It's just the two of us who've been successful today. So we've been successful in our constituencies. That was a matter. I won with almost half the vote, which I'm very, very grateful for. Fantastic team in Dundee, of course, Scotland's yes city. And it was a fantastic result. It's been a fantastic result for the SNP overall in Scotland. Today, the results aren't there in full, but what a fantastic result, not least for First Minister and SNP leader John Swinney.
Well, I'm not going to quibble with you about it being a fantastic result, but I suppose I am going to quibble now, aren't I? Because a lot of people within the SNP were suggesting that you actually get a majority, and you won't be doing that, will you?
We could have done. We don't have all the results through. I mean, it's questionable about whether or not we will. We don't have all the results. We've got a lot of the regional list results still to come, and I think we've got 2 or 3 of the constituency results have yet to come through as well. It's always the case on these things. You've got a few results, but what an outstanding victory! Now, John Swinney did talk about that majority as a way of unblocking the constitutional lock, but what there almost certainly seems to be is an overwhelming independence majority. Again, another independence majority in the Scottish Parliament. And I think John Swinney was right to put the question and say, look, let's unblock this. Let's give people a little bit certainty about what they're voting for, because there's clearly a very strong appetite for independence in Scotland. And if this is a voluntary union, and we keep on being told it's a voluntary union, and Iain, I know to be fair, you've commented on this in the past as well, there must be a way for people to vote on making their own choice about whether or not they want to leave that voluntary union.
Now, there is a football match going on at the moment, isn't there, involving a team from your Westminster constituency. Yeah, against my Scottish team, Dunfermline Athletic. And they're 1-0 up at the moment.
Right, well, shall I say good luck in the Scottish Cup final, but maybe less luck in tonight's game? How about that?
I'll settle for that.
Compromise with yourself.
No, I will settle for that. And listen, I hope we don't lose sight of you. Now you're going to be in Holyrood all the time, because we like having you on the programme. So thank you very much for coming on tonight. We do appreciate your time.
Always grateful to be on, Iain, and I always enjoy your programme, so thank you for having me on.
Thank you. That's Stephen Gethins, the newly elected SNP MSP for Dundee City East. Right, let's go to a couple more calls. Let's go to Hardik in Croydon. Hello, Hardik.
Hello, Iain. Thanks for taking my call.
Hi. What would you like to say?
So I am not an active member of any of the political parties. I do have my political views, but I'm not actively engaged with any of the parties. A friend of mine, who's also my neighbor, is has contested from Conservative side in Croydon Council election. And I was campaigning for him just as a friend, not as a member of the party. I was just supporting him in campaigning. And I made an observation that surprised me. So we are talking about who has won, who has done well, who has not done well, end of two-party politics, etc. My observation was that there are a lot of people who are completely disengaged with the process, who have no interest, no understanding of how the process works, especially younger people, and very soon 16-year-olds will be able to vote in our elections. So when I spoke to some people asking for their views, they had no idea, no interest, and they were simply not engaging with the process, which I thought was quite sad. It's not a sign of a healthy democracy. So I just wanted to highlight that observation that I made over the last few weeks.
And I mean, given that you're not a member of a political party, but you've been campaigning for somebody who obviously was representing a political party, going through that experience, do you feel more positive about the whole political process or not?
Not very positive, and that's my point. Especially the younger generation, they were completely, and a lot of people said things like, all politicians are the same, it doesn't matter, nothing changes. And we've had some issues in our Croydon Council over the last few years, and that was reflecting quite heavily on the feedback that we were getting on the doorsteps when I was supporting my friend.
Thank you very much indeed, Hardik. Thank you for calling in. Let's go to Anu, who's a first-time caller in Richmond. Anu, hi.
Hi, Iain. I listen to LBC literally like 7 in the morning and then 7 at night. So Nick Ferrari and then yourself at 7 at night. So just interesting to see that I speak to a lot of people in Richmond Borough, and they say, oh, there's no point voting because Lib Dems will always be in the constituency. And I think that's a silly answer, because obviously there's been a lot of changes. So when I was growing up, there's always like Labour and Conservatives. But now people are complaining about Labour and Conservatives. Why can't, if they don't like Greens and they don't like Reform, why can't they start their own party? It's not difficult.
I couldn't agree with...
Yeah, it's not difficult, is it?
Yeah, I completely agree.
Party. Yes.
Because,
exactly.
I mean, people say, oh, well, my vote doesn't count and I live in a constituency where the Tories always win or Labour always win. Well, let me tell you, in the ward that I vote in Tunbridge Wells, I was looking up...
I don't know where you live. Yeah, so...
Yeah, well, I was looking at that, the result of that today, and the winning candidate, who is an independent, won with 932 votes, and the Liberal Democrat in second place got 912 votes, I think it was. So only a difference of about 20 votes. So, OK, it wasn't just one vote, but I mean, in that circumstance, everybody's vote counts.
Exactly. So there's no Asian party at the moment. For example, I'm Indian. I live in Hampton, which is very unusual. There's it's very British, English people here. But they turn around and say there's no point voting because Lib Dems will always be here. I've lived here for 20 years. I was brought up in Hounslow, which was mainly Labour. And I think it's ridiculous. People say, oh, we don't want to vote. And then they turn around and say, oh, Reform are like this, Greens are like this. I say to them, well, nothing's stopping you from starting a party. Obviously, Labour can join with, Labour can join with Lib Dems, Conservative can join with Lib Dems. You can have joint parties.
But also, it's a complete fiction that Richmond is always Lib Dem, because Zach Goldsmith was the MP for Richmond Park. You look at the wider area, Ed Davey lost his seat, I think, was it in 2015, something like that, and was replaced by Tanya, I can't remember her name now. Anyway, she lost in Theresa May's seat last time. So, look, votes count, and anyone that says they don't needs to give their head a wobble. That's my new favourite phrase, by the way. Give your head a wobble. Anu, thank you very much indeed. 0345 6060 973. Now, Ed Davey lost to James Berry. It was actually, Tanya was, I think, the one that won against Vince Cable. Anyway, no matter. It's 8:30. Let's get the news headlines from Tim Daly.
Labour's lost more than 1,000 council seats and the control of 28 local authorities in this year's local elections. Barnsley and Sunderland have gone to Reform UK. It also now has 3 MSPs in Scotland. Elsewhere, Labour's lost the control of Norwich and Waltham Forest councils to the Greens. In Wales, First Minister Eluned Morgan has resigned as the leader of Welsh Labour after Plaid Cymru became the nation's largest party. And Donald Trump has announced there's to be a 3-day ceasefire in the war between Russia and Ukraine. He says it will begin tomorrow and will involve a suspension of all kinetic activity as well as a swap of 1,000 prisoners from each country. LBC weather, clear spells for most of the UK overnight, although rain could well persist in the far north of England. Chilly in places leading to a patchy frost and fog in some areas with a low of around 4 degrees.
Elections 2026. Follow it live on LBC.
Buying a home on a holiday park was the retreat you always wanted. But then came unexpected site fee increases. And that was before the dramatic loss in value. If you bought a home on a holiday park in the UK, you may have been missold. holidayparkadvicecentre.co.uk could help you receive thousands in compensation. Text ASSIST to 78900. That's ASSIST to 78900.
There's one green bottle sat on my fridge shelf. This green and white bottle that supports my gut health. Beautiful by nature, beautiful by name. It's the tastiest way to up my gut health game.
Beautiful Gut Health. Switch your yogurt to the UK's #1 kefir and give your gut and your summer a lift. Kefir is a source of calcium which contributes to the normal function of digestive enzymes. For verification of UK's #1 kefir, see beautifulguthealth.com/radio.
At John Lewis Money, we know your home is more than an address. It's the sunlight pouring in. Well, sometimes. The coffee on tap and the best spot on the sofa. It's why our home insurance is thoughtfully designed with 3 levels of flexible cover for the home you've created. Because when you notice the details, you notice the difference. Search John Lewis Money. Terms and exclusions apply. John Lewis Finance Limited is authorised for insurance distribution and credit broking by the Financial Conduct Authority.
This is LBC. Message Iain Dale on WhatsApp now on 0345 60 60 973.
8:33 on LBC. Gareth Knight, let's talk Birmingham, because I'm looking at the results in so far in Birmingham. It really is a mess, isn't it? You've got Conservatives on 16, Green Party on 18, Reform on 21, Labour on 16, Liberal Democrats on 12, and Independents on 12. I mean, that will definitely be no overall control, won't it?
Yeah, so the conversation we were having a few moments ago, trying to explain no overall control, this is a perfect example of it, because when you look at these figures in Birmingham, so 101 seats in total, so you need 51 seats to have overall control of that council. And at the moment, you would need at least, I think you would have to have at least 3 political parties involved in forming.
Well, at the moment, you'd have to have 4, looking at the maths of that. Okay. And if you put the Conservatives and Reform together, you only get 37. No, you get, 37. If you put Labour, Lib Dems and Greens together, you still don't get to 50.
So then you've got the problem that all the political parties are going to have with Greens and the Reform Party. Bearing in mind that in many cases it's Labour and the Conservatives that have taken the big whack. So you've got to presume on a local level there's quite a bit of animosity there between, the Conservative group leader and the Reform group leader. So why would they work together? Why would a Conservative put someone in control of a council when he's just knocked off half of his friends and colleagues in a very bitter election campaign? Equally, the same goes for Labour and the Greens. And when you have this, what do you do to get control of a council? Bearing in mind, Birmingham's had quite a few problems as a council.
It has.
This is not a council.
Don't mention bins. I did, but I think I got away with it.
So this is not a council that is going to respond well to chaos and a lack of decision making.
But what happens there? Because I mean, Birmingham is, I think I'm right in saying, the biggest local authority in Europe with the biggest budget. If you can't form an administration, well, how do they pass a budget?
Well, this is the thing. Forming an administration in most councils comes down to 2 things. It's who is the literal leader of the council, because that person is the spokesman and the front man. And the way that we organise councils in this country puts an awful lot of pressure on one individual leader. And the second thing is passing a budget. And you could end up with a scenario, a council equivalent of those infamous Theresa May votes on leaving the EU, where they just voted and voted and voted, and every single time they couldn't come up with an answer. And that's the problem that you have. I honestly don't know what the solution is. And it's not just Birmingham. There's plenty of other councils that are in this position. And you could find this exact same issue in Wales. Why should the Labour Party go and prop up Plaid Cymru? Labour have just lost all of their seats to Plaid Cymru. And it's exactly the same problem.
You could say because Plaid Cymru propped up Labour in several administrations over the last 27 years. But politics doesn't work like that, does it?
So what I think realistically will happen, is that the leading party, the party with the most seats, is going to have to come to some sort of agreement with another group or a couple of other groups to basically give them a lot of sort of committee chairs and things like this. It's all very mundane stuff. Lots of committee chairs in return for them not voting against their budget. So you might have mass abstentions rather than people voting for it. That's the only way I can really see it working like this, because I can't see Labour councillors voting for a reform budget. That's just not going to happen.
Well, let's talk about the Liberal Democrats before we come to more of your calls. They went into these elections full of anticipation of getting several hundred gains. They haven't quite pulled that off yet. The highest I've seen is that they were on 93 gains, but they're now down to 79. But in seats, they are the 3rd largest party in terms of the ones that have been fought in these elections. At the moment, Reform have got 1,374, Labour 891, Lib Dems 721, and the Conservatives 711, and the Greens 441. So Luke Taylor joins me now, Liberal Democrat London spokesperson and MP for Sutton and Cheam. Luke, you've had a stupendous result in your local council. I think it's almost swept the board, if not totally. What about the rest of the country, though? It hasn't been so positive for the Lib Dems.
I think you're absolutely right. In Sutton, we're very proud to completely delete the Conservative Party out of Sutton, gaining all 20 seats that they held, giving us 51 of the total 55. Very proud that residents chose to give us that endorsement in Sutton. If you look around the country, we have had good successes. Huntingdonshire, we've overtaken the Conservatives to become the biggest party there, 10 gains, and that really does show how Kemi Badenoch's leadership of the Conservative Party is not leading to electoral success, which is ultimately what the leader needs to be delivering. South Cambridgeshire, 6 gains. Newcastle were the largest party with 25 seats on that council. Your conversation just then about a coalition and no overall controls was interesting, because whilst we have 25, Reform and the Greens have 24 each. So there's going to be interesting negotiations there on how to pass decisions. And we're starting to get news in from Surrey. So West Surrey, we're expecting that to go Liberal Democrat. East Surrey as well, we've had a very good showing. And in Sussex as well, we're looking forward to gains there. And as you will aware, in Tunbridge Wells, +2 as well down there with in your patch, Ian.
Indeed, not in the ward that I live in, though. I hasten to add.
Your influence still reigns.
I just had to get that in. But in East Sussex, I mean, Ed Davey has made a big play of saying, well, look, we are the ones that are best placed to fight Reform and beat them. Well, in East Sussex, I don't think that's happened particularly for the Lib Dems, has it? And I know there's all to do with the Crowborough detention centre. But Reform have done very well in an area where you might think that they might not normally.
Yeah, and I think where you pick up specific local issues, it is more challenging because issues like that are very emotive. It's easy to whip up local concerns on specific projects like that. The Crowborough Detention Centre, again, very good one. But when you look at the gains that we have had yesterday, I think what that shows is that people respect and trust the Liberal Democrats to deliver those services that they rely upon. And what we need to do is translate that into parliamentary gains the next election. I think we've done a very good job of doing that last time around in 24. The vast majority of our MPs were elected as serving councillors. So again, we translated that local hero, local champion into representing them at a parliamentary level. It's really encouraging to see an 8th set of local elections on the bounce where we've had gains. And again, I think it reflects that delivery of quality local services, people trusting us to empty the bins and fix the potholes and all those sorts of mundane things that we forget about, but actually are so critical to get right. And then ultimately you are best placed then to go to Westminster and argue for the funding that's required for those services and any changes to legislation to make them more successful.
Now, could you be the first to congratulate, I don't know if you've ever heard of him, but Duncan Dunlop, who is the brother of my podcast partner, Tessa Dunlop, he has just entered the Scottish Parliament for the Liberal Democrats. So would you like to offer your sincere congratulations to Mr. Duncan Dunlop?
Absolutely, Ian. I will give him my heartiest endorsement. And as long as I'm not walking into an elephant trap here, I can give him a glowing recommendation, as I'm sure that you will also do.
Well, he's just won, I think, a seat on the list system. So congratulations to brilliant. Duncan. He was very.
Yeah, that's quite interesting. The list votes up there. We were very much, quite confident of a lot of the constituency wins, and I think it comes back to the conversation about those local champions that people recognise. So we were hoping to get the vast majority of our representation through trusted local champions with names that people recognise. So if we're getting list representation as well, then that's really good news for our Scottish colleagues and ultimately really good news for the Scottish people.
Thank you very much indeed, Luke. That's Luke Taylor, Liberal Democrat London spokesperson, MP for Sutton and Cheam. Right, let's go to Robin in Whitehaven. Hello, Robin.
Hello, Ian. I've got a couple of points I would like to make. The first point is I think Reform have peaked too soon, bearing in mind we're 3 years out from a general election. So I think this they've had an outstanding night of council elections, but I think it's far too soon. And I think the popularity, once council tax start getting put up, which inevitably they do all the time, regardless of who's in power in councils. But I think in the general election, I think the big two will be the main parties still, because of the council elections at the end of the day are deciding who's cutting the grass and who's emptying the bins. And the other point I would like to make is it has been an absolute disastrous set of election results for Keir Starmer, but it's also been, if not, I would say, worse for Kemi Badenoch, because they've made no progress. I think a presiding Prime Minister is always going to take a kick in council elections.
Yeah, not to this extent. It's never happened this badly. But you're right, the Conservatives haven't made any progress. In fact, they've gone back.
Absolutely, Ian. And the pressure's on Kemi Badenoch to show that she is making progress, and she just isn't. And that's where I think Labour could hold a few cards, because they could call in Andy Burnham, who has a bit of star popularity and has done a great job as Mayor of Manchester. And I think that could rejuvenate Labour. I don't see where the Tories could go.
It's very interesting that you've basically criticised Reform for doing brilliantly, you've criticised the Conservatives, and you've kind of praised Labour for doing terribly.
No, I'm not praising Labour. I'd be the first in the line to say get rid of Starmer. But I think Labour, inevitably Burnham will become the leader of the Labour Party and by default the Prime Minister. And looking at the Conservatives, I don't know. But the Conservatives have a habit of pulling people who you've never heard of, John Major, people like that, into prime ministerial roles. So I could be wrong on that. But at the moment, I think it's too early for Reform to be expecting to be the next government.
Well, Andrew Marr said this morning that he thinks Nigel Farage now will be the next Prime Minister.
Well, it's a long time to go. What I would do with Reform, Ian, is I would put Robert Jenrick in charge of Reform now. I would let a seasoned professional politician.
Really?
I think so.
What, you think he's got more electoral appeal than Nigel Farage? You're having a laugh.
I don't know. I think Robert Jenrick...
I mean, if you wanted to undermine Reform, you'd do that. Yeah, I get that.
Through COVID, I thought Jenrick done a great job in the Conservatives with the... I can't remember his exact title, but I think he done a great job.
Well, he was Immigration Minister.
Are you sure? I thought it was something to do with health, because
No, he's never been, as far as I can recall, he's never been a health minister. I think you might got him mixed up with somebody else. Robin, thank you very much. Nikki says, I barely recognise my country anymore. Watching people flock to Reform, a populist party with a conveyor belt of candidates exposed for vile social media posts and more, is deeply depressing. I'm sure you find all the Green Party candidates who have vile social media posts equally depressing, Nikki. I can only hope Starmer uses the next 3 years to steady the ship, because Reform looks dangerous, divisive and utterly unfit to govern, and I'm not a Labour supporter. Never have I been more grateful for dual citizenship if there is any chance of Farage entering number 10. Well, I mean, in a sense... Your text there, I understand it. You're a regular contributor to the programme, but the fact is you've fallen into the trap that so many people fall into, in that they don't understand why people vote for Reform. Now, Nigel Farage is speaking, Nikki, you won't want to listen to this, but Nigel Farage is now speaking in Chelmsford in Essex, and we can hear a little bit from him now.
If I look at the West Midlands, we've comfortably taken Sandwell Council from Labour. We've comfortably taken Walsall from Labour. If I go up to the North East, Sunderland. I mean, Labour used to weigh the votes. We've absolutely walked it. We're majority control in Sunderland. We're majority control in Gateshead. We're majority control in South Tyneside. And in areas like Hartlepool, where only 12 seats were up, guess how many we won? 12. So the North East, extraordinary. We go across to the North West. In Wigan, Lisa Nandy's constituency. How about that? Of the 25 seats contested, Reform won 24. Wow. Angela Rayner, I bet she's popular here. One of the few people in politics who'd be even better for the bar profits than me. How about that? Oh, it's not been recorded, is it? Oh, dear, never mind. It's a bit late to worry, really, isn't it? In the 8 seats that were contested in Rayner's constituency, Reform won 7 of them, averaging over 40% of the vote. And in St Helens, where I've come directly here from, St Helens in Merseyside. And by the way, these are red wall areas. They're red wall areas that even Boris Johnson, in the 2019 referendum, could never get close to. We have absolutely stormed it in St Helens, with the Labour Party being reduced down to just 2 seats. These are historic results. And in ward after ward, we see Labour down 35%, Reform up 37%. We are directly taking votes from patriotic old Labour in areas that, frankly, they've been pretty much able to take for granted since the end of World War I. And the same goes for the Rhondda and Merthyr and many areas like that. And increasingly, the results aren't in parts of Scotland too. But all of that is as nothing compared to Yorkshire. And what is happening in Yorkshire is remarkable. In Wakefield, of the 63 seats, Wakefield, Labour, rock solid Labour. In Wakefield of 63 seats, we've just won 58. In Barnsley, but I love their accent. The Barnsley accent's amazing. Barnsley, rock solid Labour forever. We've walked it with a massive majority. We're on the verge of winning Calderdale. We're on the verge of winning Kirklees. And with half the votes counted and the other half tomorrow, we're in with a shout. I can't believe this. We're in with a shout of winning overall control in Bradford. It is truly extraordinary. By the way, you've probably never ever seen me ever read off notes in my entire career. But you know what? After 2 days, after 9 weeks on the road, 2 days of doing this and almost no sleep, I thought I might forget. So it made sense. And what's happening in the Tory heartlands? Well, London's a bit different. In London, the Tories held up in some areas. In London, Labour held up in some areas. But London has become a bit of a foreign country in many, many ways, apart, of course, from Havering. And well done to Andrew Rossendale, Keith Prince, all the team in Havering for securing our first London borough. Although, of course, if you ask them, they say we're not a London borough. We ought to be in Essex. So I was pretty confident this morning when I did the press conference just before 9 o'clock. I was pretty confident of being able to cite Frank Sinatra by saying the best is yet to come. Suffolk, we've won just the most overwhelming majority. Quite extraordinary. Norfolk, with the biggest party. But I want to talk a little bit about Essex. I obviously saw the tendering results coming in last night, having been there and visited a few of the polling stations yesterday. And the fact we got a clean sweep there is amazing. It's amazing, really, given that I haven't visited Clacton once since I was elected. They take the piss out of me to get it back. So I was feeling good about it. But of course, Essex, we've put a superhuman. You've put a superhuman amount of effort into this over the course of the last couple of months. And indeed, I've spent a huge amount of time travelling around towns in the county, realising the sheer significance of a county that has half the shadow cabinet in it as members of parliament, all of whom assumed they were very, very safe, particularly given the Kemi bounce. Oh yes, the Kemi bounce, which is why Reform getting 38.5% of the vote, to the Conservatives 24.5% of the vote, and us getting 53 of the 77 seats is unbelievable. In fact...
Right, we will come out of this now, not least because Roddy says he's going to switch off if we don't come out of it. And I don't want anybody to switch off. I think, look, we got the gist. Nigel Farage is very, very proud of Reform UK's performance, as he should be, because it doesn't matter what your politics are. You have to look at these results through an impartial lens, and nobody can deny that Reform UK are the big victors of these local elections in England. They haven't done quite so well in Scotland, but they've done brilliantly in Wales, came second from nowhere. So, I mean, you'd have to be a pretty biased commentator to think that that was anything other than a very good performance. 0345 6060 973 is the number to call. It's 8:55.
This is LBC.
At John Lewis Money, we know your home is more than an address. It's the sunlight pouring in. Well, sometimes. The coffee on tap and the best spot on the sofa. It's why our home insurance is thoughtfully designed with 3 levels of flexible cover for the home you've created. Because when you notice the details, you notice the difference. Search John Lewis Money. Terms and exclusions apply. John Lewis Finance Limited is authorised for insurance distribution and credit broking by the Financial Conduct Authority.
The following is from TfL.
My name was Luna, like the moon. I was 2 days short of my 17th birthday when I was killed. My killer wasn't a bad man. He had a rescue dog called Frank and rang his mum every Sunday. He wasn't a speed freak. He just thought it was okay to go a few miles an hour over the limit. But that was enough to knock me off my bike and kill me.
Speeding injures or kills over 1,000 people in London every year. Slow down. To the Mayor of London and TfL, every journey matters.
When you're smiling, the whole world smiles with you.
Life feels better with a smile. Banning Dental Group Clinics. Modern, comfortable and affordable dentistry for all. See online for our price match promise. Keep on smiling.
Keep on smiling, keep on smiling, and the whole world smiles with you.
banningdental.co.uk.
Shift into a new gear with savings across the Ford range. Test drive in May and you could get up to £1,500 with our Welcome to Ford promotion. Search Ford Test Drive event to book. Ready, set, Ford. Available to customers looking to switch to Ford or upgrade an older Ford model. New cars registered by 30th of June. To find out more, search Ford Test Drive event.
Iain Dale on LBC. Listen on your smart speaker. Just say, play LBC.
8:56 on LBC. We're joined now by Sir Andrew Mitchell, Conservative MP for Sutton Coldfield, who is a former Deputy Foreign Secretary. Andrew, good evening.
Good evening, Ian.
Now, what's going on in the West Midlands? Because I would have thought that certainly in Birmingham, where Labour have been a complete shambles for goodness knows how long, particularly over the bin strike, that the Conservative Party ought to be cleaning up, but not so.
No, although in the Royal Town of Sutton Coldfield, we had 2 Labour Birmingham City Councillors who we have today ousted, and the entire Birmingham City Council membership in Sutton Coldfield is now Conservative. So we have had a very, very good day. Labour's had a terrible day across the city and has lost so many seats. And there's frankly a complete bugger's muddle now in Birmingham, because you've got a number of Greens, you've got a number of Reform people, you've got some Labour, you've got some Lib Dems, and you've got some Conservatives, with our 2 seats being the only 2 Conservative gains. And unfortunately, we've lost a couple elsewhere in the city. So it is a huge muddle, and it matters a great deal because Birmingham is Britain's second city. It's had a terrible last 2 or 3 years. The Labour Council managed to bankrupt the city. And also the truth about the bin collection, the failure to collect the rubbish piled high throughout Birmingham with rats the size of cats there, has done enormous damage to Birmingham's image as Britain's second city, not just in Britain, but around the world, which really matters in terms of investment. So the whole thing is a considerable mess. And we must hope now that common sense prevails and we manage to find some sort of way of providing decent government for Birmingham.
What about the Conservative performance more generally? Because there's been, they kept hold of a few councils in and around London, gained Westminster, gained 1 or 2 others, but overall a loss of around 500 councillors so far. It should be a lot better than this. Why isn't it?
Well, I think it takes time to recover from the nadir in our fortunes after the last election. I think we are seeing that recovery, and we see it in terms of what Kemi is doing. Kemi is the most popular of all the party leaders. She is stamping out her brand of conservatism. And although, this has been a very difficult day for the Conservative Party, except in Sutton Coldfield, nevertheless, we are on the move. And I think that is largely thanks to the skill with which Kemi is seeking to reposition the Conservative Party after that, cataclysmic defeat 2 years ago.
But there's no point in having a popular leader if she can't bring the party or drag it behind her.
Well, I think she can get the party behind her and is getting the party behind her. And certainly in Parliament, for one of the only times in my nearly 40 years career as a Member of Parliament, there is great unity behind her and what she is trying to do. Now, you may say that we are quite a small parliamentary party, and that is certainly true, but there is unity in the parliamentary party, and that will be pivotal in our recovery. I'm quite certain the Conservative Party will recover. It will probably recover primarily on the economy, and its recovery will be all the quicker because of the mess that Labour is making in our economy.
Andrew, a very good mutual friend of ours died earlier this week, Derek Conway, who was a Conservative MP for many years. I just wondered if you'd like to pay a little tribute to him.
Well, that's kind of you to say so. He was a remarkably courageous man. I served with him in the government whip's office. He was someone of very considerable integrity, and he was my friend, and I miss him very much. And you and I know his family, what a wonderful family they are, and how much the family meant to him, and what a successful father and grandfather he was. And I mourn his passing.
As do we all. Andrew, thank you very much indeed. That's Andrew Mitchell, Conservative MP for Sutton Coldfield. Right, coming up in the next hour, we will take more of your calls. I'm really grateful that there's so many people calling in on this. I think everyone understands what an important day this is. We'll also be talking to representatives from Plaid Cymru. Liz Savile Roberts will be coming into the studio. We'll also be talking to Baroness Catherine MacLeod, talking about why Labour didn't do very well in Scotland. Matthew Goodwin will be joining us, Reform UK spokesperson, who was, of course, the candidate in the Gorton-Denton Westminster by-election, and the deputy leader of the Green Party, Rachel Milwood, will be here too. But as I say, love to have more of your calls. 0345 6060 973.
On your radio, on the LBC app, and
Play LBC.
Leading Britain's conversation. This is LBC.
From Global's newsroom, New figures tonight are suggesting Labour won just 44% of the seats it was defending in this year's local elections. The Prime Minister says he's been hurt by the results, which have seen his party lose control of Barnsley Council after 50 years in power. It's gone to Reform UK. The party's leader, Nigel Farage, has been speaking in the last few minutes.
Barnsley, rock-solid Labour forever. We've walked it with a massive majority. We're on the verge of winning Calderdale. We're on the verge of winning Kirklees. And with half the votes counted and the other half tomorrow, we're in with a shout, and I can't believe this, we're in with a shout of winning overall control in Bradford.
Sir Keir Starmer's position is now coming under added pressure following the loss of more than 1,000 seats. Labour's Employment Minister, Dame Diana Johnson, has been telling Iain Dale on LBC she concedes the party is guilty of failings.
We've been terrible, I think, at setting out our vision and what we want for this country and bringing communities together. So I think there's a really big job of work that we have to do. And I think the Prime Minister recognised that this morning in his comments.
When it comes to the Conservatives, they lost more than 500 seats, but Kemi Badenoch's party is insisting signs of a recovery are developing. The Tories' Shadow Health Secretary, Stuart Andrew, has been telling LBC the party put up a good fight.
We've gained seats and councils in places that people would not have expected us to have won so soon after such a huge defeat at the general election. So Westminster, for example, and in Wandsworth, for example, holding on to places like Bexley, where, Reform was saying to us they were going to win that and they were going to take it from us.
In Wales, Reform UK is now the second largest party in the Senedd after taking 34 seats. It's also managed to get its first 3 MSPs in the Scottish Parliament. And 22 British passengers and crew on board the cruise ship, which has been hit by an outbreak of hantavirus, are expected to reach Tenerife on Sunday. Officials from the UK Health Security Agency and the Foreign Office will meet the MV Hondias when it docks in the Canary Islands. In the city, the FTSE 100 closed down 43 points at 10,233. The pound will buy $1.36 and €1.15. LBC weather, clear spells for much of the country overnight, although rain could well persist in the far north of England. Chilly in places, leading to a patchy frost and fog in some districts as well. We'll see a low of around 4 degrees. From Global's newsroom, for LBC, I'm Tim Daly.
This is LBC from Global, leading Britain's conversation with Iain Dale.
Hello, a very good evening. It's 9:04 on LBC. It's very unusual for you to hear my voice on a Friday night. I know that. I haven't usurped Rachel Johnson. She was genuinely going on holiday somewhere, so she will be back next week. Right, we're going to talk to Liz Savile Roberts in a moment, Plaid Cymru leader in Westminster and MP for Dwyfor Meirionnydd. Have I got that right, Liz? Go on, please say yes.
That's pretty good.
Thank you. Gareth Knight is here, LBC's elections commentator. Look, we've got 55 minutes to go on the show. I had expected all of the results to have been in by now, but there's still quite a few outstanding, aren't there?
Yes, there's 10 councils that are yet to declare. Most of these have declared some results, but they haven't declared all of them. And this is often because there might be a recount, there might be 2 or 3 recounts. In an age of multi-party politics, you're more likely to get recounts. And what we don't have in council elections that we would get at a general election is people vying to save their deposit, but you will still always get some candidates that will, for possibly ego reasons, sometimes lack of experience, they will want the results to be absolutely bang on.
Candidates with egos,
heaven forbid. Scotland, we have all of the constituency results through now. We're now just waiting for the top-up results. I don't quite know why this takes so long, because it's a simple calculation on a spreadsheet that we could probably do in 5 minutes if they want to give us the numbers. So it is pretty straightforward, but the top-up results are still to come in. There is now, however, a majority for independence in Scotland. So the SNP and the Greens added together equal a majority, and with a decent number, sort of 28 top-up seats to come in, you've got to presume that majority will be fairly sizable. And I think that certainly you've spoken, Iain, about if they get a sizable majority, it really is time for them to actually go for Indy Ref 2, 12 years on since the last one. they really need to give that some serious consideration. Wales all came through.
Just to finish on Scotland, It's not clear who's going to come in second place yet, is it? Because Labour on 13, Reform 10, the Greens 10, Conservatives 9 and Lib Dems 9. So after the reallocation of the list seats, I mean, any of those could, in theory, finish in second place.
And it's changing quite a bit, and I'm not entirely sure which regions have the top-ups. But of course, the way that this works, and I won't go into it now because I would spend the whole of the next hour trying to explain it, but the way the system works is that the SNP are very unlikely to get any top-up seats because they've won so many constituency seats. So and it's on a regional basis. So if you think about somewhere like Glasgow, the second preference... it's difficult to explain without going into all the details of getting a flip chart out to try to explain
let's not.
this. But
that way lies madness.
It could be. You could, but conceivably, it is perfectly possible that the Conservatives, the Greens, and the Lib Dems could end up with more seats overall than Labour. It is possible. I'm not entirely sure whether that's realistic because Labour are very entrenched in some of those areas. Wales, so we kind of expected Wales to be one of the slower places to count. They're actually one of the quicker places, as it turned out. They've got a new electoral system that's actually extremely straightforward. That electoral system is simply you vote for the party rather than the candidate, and the party chooses who goes to the top of the list. It used to be used for European parliaments. It's a controversial system. People that really support proportional representation often really dislike this system because it puts too much power in the hands of parties. But it's a very, very simple system. You simply vote for the party. And the result of that is wonderfully inconclusive in the sense that it's going to have to force parties working together that are not necessarily going to want to work together because they've just fought a very bitter election campaign where certainly Plaid Cymru has clearly taken a lot of seats off Labour. The Reform have clearly taken a lot of seats off the Conservatives. I know it's not as simple as that, but on the face of it, that's what it is. So lots of conversations to be had in town halls, parliaments and Senedd chambers. I don't know what we call them, the various lobby and areas in the Senedd, because there's a lot of work to be done in the next couple of weeks.
Right. Well, as if by magic, we have Savile Roberts with us, Plaid Cymru leader in Westminster. Liz, you've hot-footed it down to London tonight to do some media, for which we're very grateful. What were you expecting at the beginning of this campaign?
That we would have a campaign in Wales that was in the face of what UK-wide feels to be the politics of division, the politics of setting communities against each other, the politics of despair. And I think what has come through, and I'm very, very grateful to those people who haven't voted for Plaid Cymru before, but that we have managed to offer, of course, the proposal of change, which is the other word that everybody wants to mention, but that is the change with ambition and within hope. And of course, in what is economically the poorest region of the United Kingdom, but a place that feels that for devolution to work, there has to be change. Now, for Plaid Cymru, because I'm very used to people telling us that, oh, you do well in certain places in Wales, but we have done well in places in Wales where we have never cut through to anything like this.
And that's really interesting, isn't it? Because it used to be, I mean, for people like me who operate in London and the South East, I mean, I always thought, well, Plaid Cymru, they're quite strong in North Wales and West Wales, but South Wales, absolutely no trace at all. That's completely changed, hasn't it?
That has completely changed. I mean, our presence with 3 seats in the 2 Cardiff constituencies as well. But I think the Plaid Cymru, we are well known. People are familiar with us, so they know who we are. If you look at, say, particularly, well, Labour had many of their members standing down, and with Reform, they were completely an unknown quantity. So in that situation, we've been able to come forward. We're now going to have to look at ways of, how do we, like in real life, in all honesty, you have to find ways of getting on with other people on certain occasions in certain ways to actually achieve anything. And the voting system in Wales makes you do that as well. But the really, really important thing now is that people have put their faith in a change. We've had Labour in power for the last 100 years. It's our job now to actually make sure that people's lives actually improve.
But of course, you haven't got a majority. And some people will be very cynical and say, well, you can't really change much if you haven't got a majority. And it's quite difficult when you look at the maths of this, you can't really see a coalition being made. Okay. And what's the party position on that?
Well, I mean, what we were talking about in running into the election, of course, and you're always waiting to what the maths actually turns out in terms of numbers. And of course, when the SNP first went into power in 2007, they were a minority government. And then you actually have to talk to people and you have to agree on certain things. It can be over the budget. It can be certain other things as well. That's what we're going to have to do now. It's too early to say exactly what it will be, but I anticipate that it will be some sort of agreement over issues rather than a coalition.
And will you talk to Reform about things? Because, I mean, they're the number 2 party. You've got 43 seats. They've got 34. I mean, clearly you're not going to go into a coalition with them. I get that. But one thing I was struck by at the debate that we hosted last week in Cardiff was that all of the 6 leaders seem to get on quite well with each other.
Well, perhaps that's quite a good thing that people do actually talk to each other. I mean, I think there's a degree of sort of performative viciousness within politics as well, which, again, you took a step back. All right, we can do that for entertainment. But also, if we're in the business of actually making a difference to people's lives and making the decisions that do that, well, actually, if we can be fairly civil with each other, that is quite a good thing. But, and there is a but here, the difference in our politics and our values to that of Reform are so immense. And I know that Rhian ap Iorwerth said before the election that we would not be working with Reform.
But you have got one thing in common, haven't you? The word independence. I mean, Reform UK wouldn't exist if it didn't want Britain to be independent from the European Union. You want Wales to be independent from England. But I was very struck by your leader in the debate last week when I said, well, what does independence mean for you? Are you effectively the same as the SNP? You want just a complete split? And I was quite surprised when he said, well, we want a new union in Britain. And I was thinking, well, how does that work with independence?
Well, you start off with looking at the relationship between Wales and, I mean, to be brutal about it, particularly the southeast of England, which is where power lies and where the greater interest lies within the United Kingdom. If you're looking at a reset of that, then you're actually looking at the powers that we have in devolution. To me, it seems first and foremost that we have to make devolution work. And we don't have, this is where it gets boring and anarchy, but we have a different set of powers in Wales than that of Northern Ireland and that of Scotland. It seems to me as it stands that we can't actually make that work in a way that gives us the opportunity of building out of poverty. The cliche is that we manage poverty rather than actually have the means of addressing it. So that has to work first of all. Now, everybody in Wales knows that Plaid Cymru espouses independence. But they put their faith in us, and partly they put their faith in us because we've told them and they believe us that we're not going to try and trick people into independence in any shape or form.
Because you're not actually
we're growing our democracy.
You're not doing the same as the SNP, where the SNP are demanding a second referendum. You're not even demanding a first, as I understand it.
Because we know from our experience, the 27 years of devolution that we've had, devolution has not landed so far the people of Wales in a better place. So in the first instance, we have to make it work as it is. Because otherwise, what we keep is a dependency culture across the United Kingdom. And I would want to see Wales, a place where I've lived, originally from London, a place where I've lived for most of my adult life, to grow in that sense of confidence. So we don't need to be dependent.
But how can you make devolution work when you as a party haven't got a majority in the Welsh Parliament? I mean, because what you're going to come up against is the same that Keir Starmer has. After 2 years, people are thinking, well, what's different? We don't think much has changed in this country since you've been Prime Minister. That's what you've got to guard against,
That's exactly
isn't it?
How we can realise some form of change as swiftly as possible is what is the major challenge that faces us. But also, I think, within the politics of the United Kingdom, this adversarial, it's you've won or you've lost, that is not healthy. That we do need to find a way, and this voting system, for better or worse, is designed to do that. We do need to find a way of actually cutting across party lines and working
together. Will you look to change that voting system? If
you're talking to me personally, I hope we do. I do not like the closed list.
Because it does put all the power in the central parties, doesn't it?
I think elected representatives should be answerable to the people who voted them in and to their parties and to their consciences, and you should always be pulled each way. But this is what Labour at the time, if we were to move away from any partly first past the post, Labour insisted that it had to be a closed list. This was a change to PR. it changed. This changed how the balls broke on the snooker table. It changed the game. But it won't. I hope it doesn't.
Well, it's come back to bite them, hasn't it? In a way.
It has indeed. But I think there's more than just.
So would you want to go back to the old system, or
I would certainly like us to consider using an open list as opposed to a closed list, and I think there may be other models that could be better. I don't think this model, and possibly the size of the constituencies as well. The important thing is to make sure that elected representatives are felt to be answerable to the people who they're serving.
Liz, great pleasure to see you as always. Thank you very much indeed for joining us. We'll come to some of your calls in just a few moments' time and hear a bit more from Gareth about what's going on in England, because there are still quite a few results to come in England. It's 17 minutes past 9.
Elections 2026. Follow it live on LBC.
Oh, bad traffic. Great news, isn't it? More time in the car. Joy. Maybe you don't feel it. Maybe you don't drive a Lexus NX yet. But when you do, you'll see the positive of peak hour, the delight in a detour, the love of the long way. The Lexus NX plug-in hybrid. Experience amazing before you arrive.
Take Irish ferries from Dover to Calais, where your pet travels in the pet lounge. You'll be barking not to. Irish ferries. See travel differently.
There's one green bottle sat on my fridge shelf. This green and white bottle that supports my gut health. Beautiful by nature, beautiful by name. It's the tastiest way to up my gut health game.
Biotiful Gut Health. Switch your yogurt to the UK's #1 kefir and give your gut and your summer a lift. Kefir is a source of calcium which contributes to the normal function of digestive enzymes. For verification of UK's #1 kefir, see biotifulguthealth.com/radio.
Your time is valuable. Your perspective should be too. The Economist cuts through the noise with the stories that truly shape your world.
How can you believe that a new regime won't crush you just like the previous one? Online scams are stranger than they've ever been.
When the world's turned upside down, know which way is up. Read, watch, or listen to The Economist.
Iain Dale. Text 84850. This is LBC.
19 minutes past 9 on LBC. Georgina is a first-time caller in Islington. Hello, Georgina.
Good evening. How are you?
I'm terribly well, thank you. What would you like to tell me?
Well, I'd just like to say there wasn't a doubt in my mind about the total obliteration of Labour in these local elections. The people have spoken, and even Keir Starmer must admit that he doesn't have the capacity to be the Prime Minister of our great nation or the Labour Party. He's as popular as a rattlesnake in a lucky dip as far as I'm concerned, even within his own party. Starmer stated that he's had a tough time in this election for Labour, but I can assure Mr Starmer that it's been an even tougher time for the electorate to endure his lies and his two-tier policies. This man has hit the self-destruct button for both him and the Labour Party. You know, it's been an absolute nightmare. They've taken away the hope for our country, which is something that they should never have done. They should never have taken away our hope. They also took away our freedom of speech, and they took away our democracy. They took away our right to be proud of our culture, our heritage, and our flag.
Sorry, Georgina. How have they taken away our freedom of speech? How have they taken away our culture? How have they taken away our democracy?
Because they are making it now that people are embarrassed to show the love for their country, to fly your flag. Because people are getting arrested, having police.
But, I mean, I'm sorry, but Keir Starmer, whenever he makes a speech, he's got two blooming great Union Jacks behind him.
I'm awfully sorry. That's for show. Keir Starmer is more interested in the flag for Europe, not our Union Jack. Now, you've got to be honest here. This is about honesty. Your broadcasting programme is about honesty, and I'm being honest with you. And if you would allow me to finish, I will let you know what I think, and then you can shoot me down in flames if you wish.
Go on.
Right. You know, the people, like I say, have spoken, and, the Labour Party have not been a Labour Party that the old Labour parties used to be, who were on the side of the working man. They are not on the side of the working man anymore, and they are not putting money in the pockets of the working man. They are more interested in people who are coming over here in boats, putting money in their pockets, housing them at our expense, with their living accommodations, their clothes, their food, their recreation, and the taxpayer, be them Labour or be them Conservative or whatever else, are paying for that privilege. And we need to look after our own before we look after any other people who are coming here from other countries.
So who did you vote for today? Yesterday?
That is my business. I don't want to discuss my personal vote.
Well, hang on. You've just spent 5 minutes. You've just spent 5 minutes ranting against Labour and Keir Starmer, and now you go all prissy on me.
No, I'm not prissy at all. I'm not prissy at all. If you want to know who I voted for, I'm very proud to say that I voted Reform.
And why were you reluctant to say that in the first place?
Because I didn't want to say it on your programme.
Why?
Because that's my personal business. Okay. The same. Who did you vote for?
That's my personal business.
Ah, well, there you go. One rule for you and one rule for me. You should be a politician.
Well, I tried to be. It didn't go too well, though, did it?
No, it certainly didn't. But can I just say, just before I go, well, before you cut me off, even now, Keir Starmer thinks the problem is that he hasn't delivered his policies fast enough. This is not about him delivering his policies fast enough. It's because the people of this country do not like the policies that he is delivering. Charity begins at home, my love, and it always has. And we need to start thinking of the population of Britain and getting them on their feet before we start thinking about being beneficiaries to people from other countries. We, the British, come first.
OK, Georgina, thank you very much indeed. Joe says, you're great, Ian, but do remember you're on camera. What did I do during that call to make Joe text that? I'm now really worried. Right, let's go to David in Manchester. Hello, David.
Are you OK, Ian?
Hi, what would you like to tell me?
Yeah, I bet you're usually on your fourth glass of red on a Friday night by now, but instead
No, because I'm one of these strange people that doesn't drink alcohol.
Oh, right, I apologise. I was going to say, instead, you're stuck in a studio talking about the madness that is British politics.
Yeah, but what could be better than that?
Yeah, well, there's not a country quite like us when it comes to politics. We are bananas, Ian, when it comes to politics.
Not quite as bananas as the United States at the moment.
You know, well, no, but we're not far behind, I don't think. I mean, the way I look at it with Labour Party, with Keir Starmer, I think they've got an out option, which is Andy Burnham, who's the Mayor of Manchester. Now, I think a lot of it with me, with politics, and this may sound a bit crazy, but I go on language and how they come across and the character and the kind of likeability. I think that goes a long way in politics. I genuinely do. And I think Keir Starmer, for me, he seems very robotic. He seems a bit too cold-hearted at times. It's all very sort of pristine and precise, and it's like, come on, that can't be you like that all the time. It's like to me, it's like he's got a facade up all the time, and I know most politicians are like that, but you're just wanting someone to be a bit more real. And I think Andy Burnham's an out option. I'm not saying he's the answer, Andy Burnham, because I think in Manchester, where I live, it's quite split. Some people think he's done good for us as a mayor, and some people think he hasn't. So even he's split, but he's got that Northern Scouse accent, and I think it does, believe it or not, go a long way in that. Certainly, you
can't have a prime minister just because they've got a northern accent.
Well, I'm on about the northern.
I mean, if I was going to have a prime minister based on somebody having a northern accent, I would choose the Liberal Democrat Lisa Smart, because I think she's Victoria Wood reincarnated, and she's got this kind of, well, trust me because I'm a blunt northerner. I tell the truth. You can trust me because I'm a northerner, and I like that.
Yeah, I didn't mean it as such as that. I mean, look, you've got to have more credentials than that. I get it, but I'm just saying, as an out option for Labour, there's certain parts up north where a Labour stronghold, and people have had their heads turned. So what I'm saying is, that is an out option for him to maybe put someone like Andy Burnham in there who just comes across a little bit more real than Keir Starmer.
Well, I think he's a better salesman than Keir Starmer.
Yeah.
Look, politics is partly about selling your message and marketing your policies, and Keir Starmer isn't very good at doing that.
No, he's not.
And Andy Burnham is. But my problem with Andy Burnham, and who I think is actually a genuinely nice guy, I don't know him well, but I've known him, 15 years or so, and interviewed him quite a few times, had quite a few chats with him. And I do like him. But I've never really thought that he had any more of a vision for the country or for the Labour Party than Keir Starmer does.
No. Can I just quickly say as well, before you cut me off, I think when it comes to the next general election, I think it's going to be absolutely huge, this. It's going to be nothing in the middle. It could be catastrophic for the country. It could be great. It's in the gutter at the moment to me, politics. When I went to the voting booth last night, I'll be honest with you, I was politically redundant. I looked at all the options. I didn't have a clue to vote for. I did vote, but I didn't have a clue to vote for. That's how bad it is for me. How bad's that?
And who did you vote for?
Not in the voting booth. I'm not going to discuss that.
Okay. All right, David, look, I've got a guest coming on. I'm conscious of the time, but thank you very much indeed for your call. And that guest is Baroness Catherine MacLeod, Labour peer, former advisor to Alistair Darling when he was Chancellor during the financial crisis, and also previously the political editor of the Glasgow Herald. Catherine, very good to see you there. Let's talk about what's happened in Scotland and the demise of the Scottish Labour Party. It seems incredible that at the moment they're only just about into double figures in seats. What do you put that down to?
Well, I think that their campaign obviously wasn't very good. It was. It didn't catch anybody's imagination, and I think that they've had to contend with sort of terrible headlines in the Scottish papers and the national papers about Peter Mandelson and the shenanigans in the Labour Party, who wants Keir Starmer to go and who doesn't want to go. And the Labour Party, not just in Scotland, but throughout the United Kingdom, failed to make the campaign about the issues that local authorities are interested in, that the opposition, probably helped by the media, although I wouldn't for a minute blame the media, managed to make the election campaign about whether or not you like Keir Starmer.
Which, in a sense, I mean, that you could say that across the whole country in a way. And OK, we all say, well, people should vote on local issues, but we all know that national issues do come into it. But what about Anas Sarwar's role here? Because if we had been talking 18 months ago, I think we would both agree that he had a really strong chance of becoming First Minister. And it's all gone wrong. Now, he can't blame that all on Keir Starmer. Surely he's got to also look at himself.
I think you're quite right. I think their campaign obviously wasn't good enough. I don't think that they managed from the outset to make the to set the campaign alight, to make it about fundamental Labour issues, to set out a vision for the country. So I think it was probably a pretty pedestrian campaign all round, and he's paid a very high price for that today. I think personally, on a personal level, I think he's a very good candidate. I think he's very personable. I think people liked him when they met him, and I think he's a really decent guy, but their campaign did not take off.
Do you think he should quit as Labour leader?
I don't. I think he'd be a huge loss to the Labour Party. I think that he has got a lot of experience. I think he's a really decent guy. I think that it would be a real shame for the Labour Party in Scotland if he fell on his sword. So personally, I hope he doesn't, but I haven't spoken to him. I don't know what his plans are, but he would be a huge loss to the Scottish Labour Party.
Thank you very much indeed. That's Baroness Catherine MacLeod there. We'll come to more of your calls in a moment. We'll also catch up on what's happening in England with Gareth Knight in just a few moments' time. It's 9:30 on LBC. Time for the news headlines with Tim Daly.
Sir Keir Starmer's position is coming under new pressure this evening following Labour's losses in the local council elections. The party's lost over 1,000 seats and the control of 28 local authorities so far. One of those includes Barnsley in South Yorkshire, which had been under Labour control for 50 years. In Wales, Reform UK is now the second largest party in the Senedd behind Plaid Cymru. And 22 British passengers and crew on board the cruise ship, which has been hit by an outbreak of hantavirus, are expected expected to reach Tenerife on Sunday. Officials from the UK Health Security Agency and the Foreign Office will meet the MV Hondias when it docks in the Canary Islands. LBC weather, clear spells for much of the country overnight, but rain could well persist in the far north of England. Chilly in places, leading to a patchy frost and fog in places, with a low of around 4 degrees.
This is LBC.
Shots from halfway causing goalkeeping howlers, roofs badly leaking from sudden rain showers, Saturday hackers and onion sizzling. These are a few of our favourite things. When you're singing yet not winning, when your bet's gone bad, we simply remember our favourite things and then we'll feel so glad.
For all your favourite things, visit BetVictor. 18 plus gambleaware.org. Please gamble responsibly.
The following is from TfL.
I got loads of flowers the other day and messages from people I didn't even know. My mates spelled out my name in tea lights and my mum hung my favourite footy shirt on the railings next to the lamppost where I got killed. By a nice lady, just someone who thought it was okay to go a few miles an hour over the limit.
Speeding injures or kills over 1,000 people in London every year. Slow down. To the Mayor of London and TfL, every journey matters.
Donations to British Heart Foundation fund scientific research that can help save lives. People like Joe, who's pitching his next big business plan. Maria, who's sending out her wedding invitations. And Jack, who's just being a teenager again. Because when you donate, you fund more than just science. You help save lives. British Heart Foundation funds research that aims to cure inherited heart muscle diseases, but our work is not done. Donate now at bhf.org.uk and keep us beating.
Iain Dale on LBC. Listen on your smart speaker. Just say, play LBC.
9:33 on LBC. Now, some of the more observant among you may have noticed that we haven't had a Reform UK spokesperson on tonight, not through lack of wanting, I can assure you, because I think, as I said before, anybody that looks at these results, no matter what their politics, just simply can't deny that it has been Reform UK's day. We heard from Nigel Farage making a speech in Chelmsford earlier, naturally being quite jubilant, and why not? Who wouldn't be? Well, let's talk to Matthew Goodwin, Reform UK spokesperson, who was its candidate in the Gorton and Denton Westminster by-election. Seems ages ago now. Matthew, very good evening. Have you, when this election campaign started, what were you expecting from it, and have today's results surpassed your expectations, or do you think there could have been a few more gains?
Well, I think the results have been absolutely fantastic. I think basically inside the party, the goal was to broaden and deepen Reform support. And I think we've seen that, not only in terms of the gains in Labour's strongholds in the Red Wall, but also in some of those Conservative areas too, places like Essex and Suffolk and Hampshire, and of course in Wales, where Reform is now highly competitive. And look, I mean, let's just be realistic about this. If we want to win the next general election, which I think now is entirely plausible, given what we've seen today, we need to have that broad and deep support way beyond the southeast. We have to go into areas that, of course, Boris Johnson and the Conservatives won in 2019, but we have to in some ways go further than that. And I think that's been achieved. I think you can look at this, Iain, and you can see a party that is no longer just a party of protest. It's a party that is, preparing for government. And it's also a party that's got geography on its side. My instinct here, and I'm happy to be wrong, but I think Labour are going to chase after the Greens more than Reform. I think they're going to get dragged into the urban areas and the university towns. And I think we're going to see something of a repeat of what Boris Johnson achieved in 2019, which is going to be Middle England, non-London England, mobilising behind Reform to stop Zach Polanski and the Greens and whatever replaces Keir Starmer.
I think one of the phenomenons, if you look at the results, particularly outside London, but also I think Reform have done pretty well in one or two areas in London, that it is the number of seats that they've won having attracted the Labour vote. Now, you might say, well, Labour's really unpopular, so obviously that was an easy thing to do, but it's not automatic that you would get those votes. Whereas I think that a lot of people think that Reform support comes predominantly from former Conservative voters, and obviously there are a lot who've gone over to Reform. But doesn't that present you with a problem, though? Because all of the main people that have come over to Reform in the past year, they've all been former senior Conservatives, and which I would have thought might put a lot of Labour voters off. Now, it doesn't seem to have happened in this election, but doesn't Nigel Farage need to get far more high-profile Labour personalities over as well?
Well, I think in some ways Nigel has had to tread a bit of a difficult balancing act, because on the one hand, when it was just Nigel Farage, people said, well, come on, this is a one-man show, how can we take it seriously? And then when he brings people on board who have extensive government experience, people say, well, hang on, these are the wrong people. I think what he's done quite well...
But most of them have failed. That's the problem, isn't it?
No, I don't. Well, I don't think that at all. I mean, I know Robert Jenrick very well. I know Suella Braverman very well. These are people who have worked within government departments, who know where, they know how government works. They know how civil service departments work. I think what is interesting, though, and what your question alludes to, Ian, is that the deadline for Conservatives defecting to Reform has now passed. That was May the 7th. Reform will not take any more Conservative Party ministers. I agree with you, actually, that Reform now needs to take people from across the landscape and also, by the way, outside of politics. I know a lot of people in business, a lot of major figures who are coming to discussions around Reform, haven't yet shown their colours publicly, but who are clearly on side. And I think that's probably what we'll see between these elections and the next general election, which is the top team, if you like, expanding in ways that people probably don't expect. I mean, it's not going to be a Tory tribute act. I think that would be catastrophic for Reform to become a Tory tribute act. I think we would immediately alienate our new support in the Red Wall and Wales. But what I suspect we will see, in fact, I know we will see, are people outside of the Conservative Party from very different political backgrounds coming out and saying, yeah, look, if you want to save Britain, if you want to fix this broken economy, Reform is basically the only vessel for doing that.
One of the things I think a lot of people on the broad left have never really understood is people's motivations for voting for Brexit in 2016. And I think that phenomenon is being repeated now. And I'm seeing it on my board here, where I've got sort of WhatsApp messages, text, tweets coming in. And a lot of them just have no comprehension as to why Reform UK has done so well over the past 24 hours. Well, not just the last 24 hours, but you know what I mean. A lot of them use the word fascist. A lot of them use the word Nazi. A lot of them use the word Weimar. And I mean, just give me your response to that, because I think this is incredibly lazy thinking. It's insulting when people don't make any attempt to understand why people vote in the way that they do.
Well, I think the last person that I heard call Reform fascist was Lisa Nandy, and she's just woken up this morning to seeing every single seat except one in her home seat of Wigan go to Reform. So these kinds of slurs and insults clearly are not cutting through with voters. No, I mean, I think it's utterly ridiculous to make those comparisons. Look, Reform has a very diverse top team. I know for a fact, having basically gone around the country consistently for the last 3 months, Reform has enormous support among Britain's Jewish communities who feel, to be frank, that Reform is the last chance for their communities in our country. We're the only party that will stand up to Islamism, the only party that will ban Muslim Brotherhood, the only party that will ban Iranian Revolutionary Guards, or at least we were the first ones to say so, the only party that would defend our Judeo-Christian heritage. And I think many people can see that. And I think that the comparisons to the 1930s are very intellectually lazy. If anything, why people should ask themselves, why did these elections today happen in the first place, Ian? They happened because Keir Starmer and the Labour government tried to postpone these elections, and Reform, through legal action, ensured that democracy happened. Now, I don't think that sounds like a fascist party to me. So there's a lot of confusion about what Reform's really about, because people are scared. And I think a lot of people who have been in power for 30 years are now realising that their grip on power is coming to an end. And there is a new political regime that is rising in this country that is much more closely connected to the hard-working, decent majority of tax-paying citizens in this country.
One of the things that I think a lot of people fear, and I wonder whether this is something that is discussed within the top echelons of reform, is that the electorate say that, well, the Conservatives failed us over 14 years. They believe that Labour is failing and probably will continue to. And then say Nigel Farage does become Prime Minister in 2028, 2029, whenever, and say that the system of government is so stacked against a new reform government that Nigel Farage fails. I mean, I never hope that any Prime Minister fails, because if a Prime Minister succeeds, we all succeed. But in that is almost a doomsday scenario, isn't it? Because where does the electorate go if Conservatives fail, Labour fail, and then Reform fails? That's a tremendous responsibility, isn't it, on all of the senior people within Reform UK?
Well, the only thing I would say to that is my gut instinct, knowing the people in Reform, knowing the people around Nigel Farage, is that there's a lot more detailed planning that is going on than a lot of people outside of Reform appreciate. There are draft pieces of legislation. There is a plan for breaking with the consensus in Westminster, such as by leaving the European Convention on Human Rights. There are lots of bills that are drafted. There are lots of top lawyers involved, former special advisors who are involved, people who have been in government. And I think, you never know how a government is going to go. You never know how a prime minister is going to perform. But the reality is this is a lot more competent. It's a lot more credible than many of Reform's critics would like to think. Nigel Farage has been in frontline politics for 35 years. I mean, he single-handedly won the debate on Brexit. He's changed the debate on immigration. He's the only party leader outside of Labour and the Conservatives to win 2 nationwide elections with UKIP and the Brexit Party, and then win 2 sets of local elections back-to-back. He has been consistently underestimated throughout his political career, and I've known him, Iain, and I know you know him. I've known him intimately for 15 years, right, in terms of his politics, in terms of how he's been in the city, business, his life story, how he interacts with people, how he interacts with voters, how he comes up with policy. I've absolutely no doubt, contrary to much of Westminster, Nigel Farage would be an incredible Prime Minister. He won't be everybody's cup of tea, because he's going to have to challenge a lot of the groupthink in SW1, but he will be, I'm convinced of it, if he gets to number 10 Downing Street, he will be a conviction, principle-led Prime Minister who changes the zeitgeist in our country, changes the prevailing mood in our country, and that will make him one of the great Prime Ministers.
Matthew, thank you very much indeed. That's Matthew Goodwin there, Reform UK spokesperson. Right, let's have a brief word with Gareth Knight. Then I want to go to Canada. We have a caller from Quebec, and we'll be talking to Rachel Milwood, who is the Deputy Leader of the Green Party. Gareth, what is there left to count in England?
There's a handful of seats scattered across various different councils, but the vast majority of councils have now declared. In fact, as I renew my update, there's a couple more just trickling in. So in reality, the numbers are not going to change a huge amount from here. But some of the big headlines that we've got. So earlier on, we had Gateshead, Sunderland, Thurrock, Barnsley, St Helens, South Tyneside, all going from Labour to Reform. We've had the Labour Party clinging on by the skin of its teeth in places like Hounslow, big gains by Conservatives and Reform there. In places like Greenwich, the Greens and the Conservatives have made gains. In Barking and Dagenham, Reform and the Greens have made gains. They've lost Coventry to no overall control, thanks to big Reform gains again. Southwark to no overall control, big Green gains. It's a recurring pattern.
And also Lewisham, which is going to be finished, I think, tomorrow. That's expected to be a Green majority, despite the fact that Labour won every seat there 4 years ago.
So Lewisham, if we'd done this show 20 years ago, Lewisham, I believe, was the only Green council seat in the whole of London. That was kind of the basis of where they started from. And people at the time thought, the Greens could maybe do something with this. At the time, they were very much a party that had an appeal on things like conservation, on things like recycling. It was a much softer Green Party than the Green Party that we have now. So it's not a huge surprise that Lewisham would go that way. But you look at places like Newham. So I used to live in Newham for quite some time. So this contains the Olympic Park, a huge Bangladeshi population in Newham. And it's always been one of these areas, despite the fact it has a big Bangladeshi population, that hasn't had issues that Tower Hamlets next door has had. Newham has now got no overall control. That was 60 out of 60 Labour. Earlier on, people were saying that, is it healthy for democracy when you have a council that's all one party? It's not particularly healthy, but the infighting will come when you have that. I can guarantee that. But you look around the country and Labour is losing big time, and they're losing to Reform in the north and the south and in London. Some big losses as well. It's interesting, one of the things that Matthew Goodwin said just then was about the Jewish vote. One place that Reform have not picked up a single seat is in the biggest Jewish population area in the country, which is Barnet. Not a single Reform seat there, so I'm not entirely sure where he gets that fact from, but yeah, that's his right to say it. In terms of the other parties, there are things that all the other parties can cling on to with a little bit of optimism. Even Labour could turn around and say this isn't quite as bad as some people were saying. So the Conservatives, for example, have done quite well in London. They've actually done relatively well in patches across the country. And if Kemi Badenoch's objective is to define a Conservative voter in 2026, I think she'll be quite happy that progress has been made in that. The Liberal Democrats have
They have lost more than 500 seats.
But they're always going to lose seats. You see, the problem that we've got is that we're now comparing seats contested today with seats contested in 2022. In 2022, we were effectively in a 2 to 3 party political system. We're now in a 5-party system. So we are going to get, even if Reform have a terrible night for the next 2 years, they're still going to make, on paper, substantial gains, because they can't really go backwards when they are a new entrant into the field. And the same will go for the Greens as well. So
basically, it's downhill from here for both of them.
No, it's uphill. We've still got another 2 years of them going uphill. It's downhill after that. And of course, we've got a general election between now and then. And this is where it starts to get fascinating, because they are not going to have a bad local election night on paper, on numbers, until after the next general election. And that's the reason why the idea that Reform could form a government isn't as outlandish as some people think. Okay. I'm not saying it's likely, but it's perfectly possible.
He says caveating. It's 9:48.
Coming up at 10, Nick Abbott leading Britain's conversation. Next on LBC.
You've packed enough suitcases to know quality when you see it. Well, Saga Travel Insurance has been named a Which Best Buy. And now get 20% off when you buy before the 11th of June. Search Saga Travel Insurance for a quote today. New policies only. Standard & Plus are Which Best Buys May 2025. Terms and conditions apply. Over 50s only.
May we have your attention? Introducing the Volkswagen May event. Get an extra £1,000 towards your finance deposit with Solutions PCP 7.9% APR representative across the range, including the amazing Golf, Tiguan, and all-electric ID3. Major. I said it was in May, right?
Yes.
Ends Monday the 18th of May. Visit your nearest Volkswagen retailer. You may just find the car you've been looking for.
Stop it.
Participating retailers. Excludes T-Roc ID bars and Golf GTI 50. ID3 from stock only. Indemnities may be required. Registered by 30th of August. Volkswagen Finance.
Listeners, we interrupt the airwaves to share an incredible discovery. The reason why Britain hasn't been so great of late is because the country hasn't been eating enough Weetabix. We must get to work in rebuilding Great Britain, Bix by Bix. By delivering Weetabix to whoever plans the traffic diversions, to delivery drivers who can't seem to find your house, and people who don't stack the dishwasher properly. To Britain, we must say, have you had your Weetabix?
Your life's already digital. From banking and shopping to streaming and learning. So why does sorting government stuff still feel like such hard work? The government is introducing a new digital ID to make access to services quicker and more secure for everyone. But we need to hear from you. Your voice matters. Search Digital ID Consultation to have your say. Digital ID, making public services work for you.
Iain Dale on LBC. Text 84850.
It's 9:51 on LBC. I promise that Robert in Shawville, Quebec in Canada, I know you've been waiting for so long. I promise I'm going to get you on before the end of the hour. But first, I want to talk to Rachel Milwood, who is Deputy Leader of the Green Party. She's just been on BBC's Question Time, where there were 8 people on the panel, which I can't imagine was a particularly pleasurable experience.
Well, two of us were subbed in halfway, as it were.
How insulting.
Well.
We wouldn't do that to you. So, 350 gains. Now, that was, I think, roughly what maybe you were expecting, isn't it? Or were you thinking it might be a bit higher?
We've exceeded expectations, actually.
Everyone says that.
No, but we really have. I can tell you that honest truth from the inside chat rooms. No, we didn't expect, for example, to be the largest party on Waltham Forest. We didn't expect.
I used to live there. It's certainly a surprise to me.
Very good. Well, I mean, I think we knew we were doing well. We knew we were campaigning hard. Knew it was going well. We didn't necessarily know we'd do that. Obviously, we're very delighted to have 2 directly elected mayors now in London. I just think the amount we've broken through in London is really significant, isn't it? I mean, it's Labour's absolute stronghold. And here we are. We've gone from 18 councillors to, well, it's over 180 now. It was 180 when I last actually counted, but there's been more come in. So that is really, really exciting. And Manchester, we won 17. We didn't really expect that. I mean, I know obviously there was Gorton and Denton, so we've had a big push there, but that was our 127th target seat. We didn't have a big presence there before. Also Birmingham, Sheffield, Norwich looking good, all across the country. And then in rural areas, we have like Suffolk and Sussex. We've managed to kind of hold decent opposition to actually make some gains as well. So it's a very good scene.
But what do you put it down to? Because sometimes in elections, you win because everybody else hates the others. And it's not always down to the brilliance of your policies or your party or the party leaders or whatever. What do you mainly put this down to?
Well, I think people have really resonated with our message. I think they felt seen, like their kind of daily life experience, the struggle of this cost of living crisis. I think they kind of get that we've really understood that. Young people feel that we understand the situation that they're facing. And we're saying that the status quo is failing us. It has done. And that's why people are absolutely sick to the back teeth of Labour. It's because they perpetuated the status quo. And for us, this is about inequality. It's about the wealth in the country being, hoarded by a tiny few and not... 50 families have the same wealth as half the population. That's a dramatic situation. And so I think us speaking to issues like that and talking about system change and looking at how much is privatised, whether it's water or care services or, parts of the NHS, and how that means that there's money going out in profit to those corporations and not into public services. I think people desperately want significant reinvestment in public services. So that we improve the quality of people's lives and we get more flowing around the economy.
Of course, the more successful you become more of a target, don't you?
Of course.
People will scrutinise your policies, which, some people will say that some of them are a bit batshit crazy.
Will they?
Yes. Some of you look on your website, and I know the Greens have a very different way of formulating party policy to some of the other parties. And you can say it's more democratic in many ways. But there are so many policies, if you go through them, and I'm not going to give you a list here now because we haven't got time, but to ordinary voters, they're not going to be attractive. And you can talk about the cost of living crisis and environmental issues, et cetera, and talk the talk, but when you actually get into the policy detail, do you really think that a lot of your policies, as they are currently constituted, are going to resonate?
I think what people need to look at is the manifestos. And that's where we lay out the policies that we would take into, whether it's councils, government, whatever. It's all in the manifestos. We have this, it's almost like I want a separate word for it, because we have a system where any member can bring a policy, a motion to council.
And they do.
To conference, rather, it can be voted on. And that then ends up going into this archive, which is this kind of policy archive. But it is a different thing. What we end up having in our manifesto is what we campaign on and what we promise to deliver, like any other party.
Do you are, I think I'm right, Deputy Leader of Wealdon District Council in East Sussex?
I'm sort of co-leader. I'm going to be...
Co-leader.
We swap in an alliance thing, yeah.
How does that conflict with your role as Deputy Leader of the Greens?
Do you know, it hasn't caused any problems, really. I mean, it's like, you know, when I'm working with council, I'm focused on what we're delivering for Wealdon. You know, you sort of draw a boundary around that and get on with that work, and we work as a team and make sure that happens as best we can. We're all about making Wealdon greener, fairer, kinder, and we've delivered a huge amount, actually, for communities and nature, which has been really exciting.
But you've also been quite outspoken, I think, about the Crowborough Migrant Detention Centre, whereas the Green Party policy is sort of slightly goes against that, doesn't it?
No, it doesn't, because the Green Party policy is against putting migrants in camps, as is in every charity that works with asylum seekers and refugees. So no, there isn't a contradiction, actually, in what's going on there. But also, more than that, I'm very much in support of all the community groups who are actually just doing incredible work, going in and taking language sessions, music sessions. There's so much of a volunteer effort going into that camp to really help these men kind of integrate and get through the trauma and sort of, you know, have something to do and learn the language. And it's that's something I'm really supportive of.
But in East Sussex, Reform have done brilliantly, haven't they, today?
They have. We've also made gains, but yeah, they have. And I'm concerned about that.
How do you fight against that? Actually, I'm not going to ask you that because I've realised I've got 2 minutes left in the programme and I've promised Robert I'm going to get him on. So I hope you'll forgive me.
OK, that's fine.
Thank you very much indeed for coming in. Okay. Robert, I do apologise. I've left it so late, but I was fascinated by the discussion with Rachel. What would you like to tell me?
I was just saying, if you look at the projected national share of the vote, Kemi Badenoch did actually quite well. And she's at the top end of where the opinion polls put. She could come at about 20%, and Labour is at the rock bottom of 15%, which means there's, for every 3 Labour voters, there's 4 Conservatives. If this was repeated at a general election, it would actually, on the projected national share of the vote, it would put Nigel Farage in with a 26-seat majority, and the Conservatives, although they would be just under 100, they would be the dominant main opposition party.
Well, that's not very good, though, just under 100.
No.
Given that they're on 121, I think.
They have been down at about 15%, which is would be an absolute catastrophe level at 20 or 10 seats. This is all steadily moving back. She only has to go up another couple of percentage points, 1 in 50 people, and she will be pushing all the way up, heading towards the 200 level.
Well, she will be cheering you, Robert. Thank you very much indeed. And again, apologies for getting you on so late. Thank you for all of your calls and messages this evening. I'll be back on Monday from 7. Let me just tell you, there is a special episode of the Where Politics Meets History podcast. Tessa and I recorded it at about 5 o'clock this afternoon. It's a very short episode, only about 25 minutes. So if you want to download that, you would be very welcome wherever you get your podcasts from. Coming up at 1 on LBC, it's Clive Bull. But right now, here's Nick Abbott.
Thanks. In other news, the UFO files in America have been renamed the Unidentified Anomalous Phenomena Files and have been released in a move that is in no way meant to distract from everything. Donald Trump has a huge gold statue of himself put up in one of his own golf